Chapter 743. Wan Yinping stood up and tried to take a step, but a wave of dizziness came over her, causing her to fall to the side. Song Qingshu reacted quickly and caught her waist. "What's wrong?" "I don't know, I feel weak all over, and my head feels dizzy." Wan Yinping touched her forehead and said weakly, "Maybe the remaining snake venom in my body is still working. I'll be fine after a while. It's dark now. I'll carry you and look for a place to rest." Song Qingshu answered. "Okay." Wan Yinping's voice was very, very soft. Song Qingshu held her in his arms and began to search the valley. Throughout the entire process, Wan Yinping did not say a word. She only pressed her face against his chest, and no one knew what she was thinking. Finally, Song Qingshu found a small cave. He found some withered grass and laid it on the ground. Song Qingshu gently placed Wan Yinping on top of it. "Pinger, it's dark outside, and we don't know the way out. Plus, you're injured. I'm afraid we'll have to spend the night here." "Okay." Wan Yinping hugged her knees and sat on the pile of withered grass, looking at him quietly. Song Qingshu couldn't help but tease. "Where did the lively little princess go? Can't you say anything other than okay?" "Stinky brother-in-law, you're teasing me again." Wan Yinping finally laughed and couldn't help but grab a handful of withered grass and throw it at him. After the two of them played around for a while, Song Qingshu took out a handful of dry food and handed it over. He said awkwardly, "This dry food is a bit broken. Pinger, you have to make do with it." Looking at the broken dry food, Wan Yinping's eyes immediately turned red. "Brother-in-law, the dry food is broken like this. In order to protect me, you must have suffered a lot of injuries." Song Qingshu smiled carelessly. "Didn't I tell you? Brother-in-law's skin is rough. I'm fine." "You're still saying you're fine? Look at your clothes." Wan Yinping moved over and looked at him with a distressed expression. "He looks miserable, but he isn't actually injured," Song Qingshu said with a smile. "I don't believe you. Take off your clothes and let me see." Wan Yinping pouted. "Take off my clothes?" Song Qingshu suddenly had a strange expression. "Smelly brother-in-law, what kind of nonsense are you thinking in your head?" Wan Yinping pinched him with a red face. "I wanted to check where you were injured. I have some medicine on me." Song Qingshu thought. Ping of the antidote of the antidote. Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu. Okay, don't pinch me. I'll take it off, okay?" Song Qingshu made a helpless expression and slowly took off his clothes. Even though he had qi to protect his body, it could only prevent fractures and internal injuries. His skin was still scratched by the broken rocks and branches along the way. Wan Yinping's tears immediately flowed down. She choked and called out, "Brother-in-law." Okay. It just looks scary. It's not a big deal." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. "Don't move. I'll help you apply the medicine." Wan Yinping bit her lips and rolled her eyes at him. She then took out a small bag wrapped in brown paper and placed it on the ground. Song Qingshu's heart moved. He pointed at the small bags and smiled. "Pinger, why do you carry so much medicine with you?" Wan Yinping wrinkled her nose. There's a lot of poison here. If you dare to bully me, sister, I'll poison you to death." "Really?" Song Qingshu casually picked up a bag of medicine and opened it to smell it. "What poison is this?" "Don't." Wan Yinping turned pale with fright and quickly reached out to grab the bag of medicine. "This is drunken rouge." In fact, Song Qingshu had already seen the small words written on it, so he picked it out from the many medicine packets. Just by smelling it, he felt dizzy and weak. He couldn't help but be secretly shocked. This rouge drunk is really aimed at martial arts masters. With my current cultivation, even smelling it causes such a big reaction. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to faint. I'm going to faint." Song Qingshu yelled with an exaggerated expression. His entire body fell backwards. In reality, it wasn't that serious. He had already forced the poison out of his body. "I told you not to take it." Wan Yinping was angry and worried. She quickly took out another bag of medicine and used her finger to scoop up a fingernail-sized amount of powder. She brought it to Song Qingshu's mouth. "Hurry and eat it. This is the antidote." No wonder I didn't see it in the pile of medicine. It was on her this whole time. Song Qing-shu secretly looked at the antidote carefully, thinking that he would find a chance to steal it later. Stinky brother-in-law, you scared me to death. Seeing him eat the antidote, Wan Yinping patted her chest and let out a sigh of relief. In any case, brother-in-law knows that Ping will save me. Song Qing-shu laughed as he replied, but his heart was very gloomy because she had stuffed the antidote bag back into her pocket. Oof, don't move. Just lie down like this. I'll help you apply the medicine. Wan Yinping rolled her eyes at him. She took out the golden medicine bag and carefully applied the powder to the messy wounds on his body. Because Song Qing-shu was lying down, Wan Yinping had to kneel on the ground as she applied the medicine. She bent down and carefully wiped the wounds for him. Song Qing-shu raised his hand many times to steal the antidote from her pocket. However, even though his martial arts were high, he wasn't good at stealing things. He wasn't confident that he wouldn't disturb Wan Yinping, so he could only give up on this tempting idea. Wan Yinping's fingers brushed across the messy wounds on Song Qing-shu's body. The image of him tightly hugging her and using his body to protect her appeared in her mind. Her eyes became misty as she said, "Brother-in-law, you saved me again." Silly girl, if brother-in-law doesn't save you, who would I save? Song Qing-shu said with a smile. If Jiejie and I fell off the cliff at the same time, who would you save first? Wan Yinping suddenly looked at him with anticipation. Song Qing-shu was speechless. Did women like to ask these kind of questions? Of course I would save them together. The situation was urgent. You could only save one person. Wan Yinping was very dissatisfied with his perfunctory attitude. Song Qing-shu was even more depressed. However, he knew that if he didn't answer this question well, it would destroy the good impression he had built up with so much difficulty. I wouldn't save anyone. Why? Wan Yinping didn't expect this answer and couldn't help but freeze. Song Qing-shu said with a serious expression, because no matter who you save, the two people who survive will live in guilt and self-blame for the rest of their lives. It's better not to save anyone and the three of us die together. Even if we go to the underworld, we can still be a happy family. Song Qing-shu thought that Wan Yinping would be moved to tears. Who knew that the other person would respond by biting his shoulder? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Why did you bite me? Chapter 744. Nothing. I'm happy to. Wan Yinping wrinkled her nose proudly. But when she saw the deep bite mark, she couldn't help but stick out her tongue. She gently rubbed the wound. Brother-in-law, does it hurt a lot? Of course. Why don't you let me bite you? Song Qing-shu rolled his eyes at her. Okay, bite me. Who knew that Wan Yinping would roll up her sleeves and extend her white arm in front of him? Forget it. Song Qing-shu said, depressed. Hee, brother-in-law cares for me. Wan Yinping wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her head on his chest. Brother-in-law, does it really hurt? Yes. Let me help you blow. Wan Yinping got up after speaking. She puffed up her little mouth and lightly blew around the bite mark. The young girl's breath smelled like orchids. Without realizing it, Song Qing-shu's heart started to beat faster. Wan Yinping clearly felt it at such a close distance. A blush slowly spread across her face. However, she didn't show any signs of retreating. Instead, she buried her head even lower, her lips faintly brushing against his skin. Song Qing-shu's throat was a bit dry. He said unconsciously, Okay, it doesn't hurt anymore. Get up, it's improper. I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? Wan Yinping's body slid, and she moved her head in front of Song Qing-shu. She pursed her lips and looked at him at such a close distance. Her eyes became misty. Brother-in-law, you don't have to pretend. I know that you have been intentionally or unintentionally seducing me. Really, you're thinking too much. Song Qing-shu was embarrassed. It looked like his flirting skills were in the negatives. He couldn't even fool a little girl. Why are you panicking? I don't mind. Wan Yinping's face became redder. In fact, I'm very happy. You saved me when I was young. At that time, I made up my mind to marry you when I grew up. Who knew that Fu Huang would betroth Jiejie to you? If it was anyone else, I would have objected on the spot. But Jiejie loved me, so I couldn't fight with her. Also, I can see that she likes you a lot. I could only bury this thought in my heart. I've stayed with Jijia and you all these years. Seeing you live happily, it's enough for me. My heart was like still water. But not long ago, I sensed that you seemed to have feelings for me. I was both happy and terrified. Song Qing-shu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In order to pick up a girl, he jumped off a cliff and drank blood, almost losing his life. In the end, the only one who affected her was his brother-in-law. Until today, when I saw you risking your life for me, I finally thought it through. There's no need to hide my feelings for you. Wang Yinping's eyes were watery. She slowly lowered her head and kissed him with her red lips. Song Qing-shu had never thought of himself as a gentleman. He had distanced himself from Wang Yin goodbye because he was worried that she would notice something and expose his identity. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to save Song Yuanxiao and the others. But with Wang Yinping, there was no such problem. Even though she was familiar with Tang Kuobian, she wasn't as familiar with Tang Kuobian's body as her sister was. Therefore, Song Qing-shu wasn't afraid that she would notice anything. Also, he had been worrying about how to get the antidote for rouge drunk from her. Now that she had thrown herself into his arms, how could he let go of such a great opportunity? As for Wang Yinping thinking that he was her brother-in-law, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel a trace of guilt every time he thought about it. But now that he thought about it, he felt a different kind of excitement. Anyways, legally speaking, before Tang Kuobian died, he gave me the rights to his woman and his inheritance. In a way, this Wang Yinping is also his woman. Song Qing-shu's self-comforting thought flashed through his mind. He was immersed in the girl's sweet kiss. The girl's kiss was very jerky, but it was this jerkiness that could easily arouse a man. Song Qing-shu tasted the girl's sweet lips and felt his body heat up. He wanted to crush the girl in his arms and shove her into his arms. Feeling Song Qing-shu's hand reach into her clothes, Wang Yinping was shy and eager. She didn't notice that he had taken the opportunity to take the antidote for rouge drunk. After getting the antidote, it wasn't that Song Qing-shu didn't want to stop. But the girl's fragrant scent and Wang Yinping's unreserved expression made him completely lost. At this time, Wang Yinping was also very aroused. The feelings she had suppressed for many years were released, and she became a bit reckless. At this time, she didn't want to think about the consequences of doing this. She didn't want to think about how she would face her sister afterwards. There was only one voice in her mind. I want to give my body to brother-in-law. After taking off Wang Yinping's clothes, what appeared in front of him was a fresh and energetic body. It was different from a married woman's plump and soft body. The girl's body was firmer and more supple. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but stare in a daze. Brother-in-law, it was a coquettish voice that seemed to come out of her throat. Wang Yinping's call of brother-in-law was sweet and greasy. Song Qing-shu couldn't hold it back, and his body pressed heavily on top of her. Even though she was a bit shy, Wang Yinping cooperated and spread her legs. She offered her precious body that she had preserved for over 10 years to the man on top of her. When Song Qing-shu completely entered her body tightened. Her arms hugged him tightly, and she emotionally called out, "Brother-in-law, brother-in-law." Song Qing-shu kissed her slightly furrowed brows. Seeing the tears at the corner of her eyes, he couldn't help but feel pity. "Pinger, does it hurt?" Wang Yinping smiled bashfully. "Smelly brother-in-law, I just bit you. I didn't think that you would take revenge so quickly." "Ha!" Her words made Song Qing-shu's body swell up even more. He looked down at her condescendingly. "Don't you like it?" Wang Yinping gave a low cry and bravely responded to his gaze. "I like it. I like it when brother-in-law bullies me like this. In the future, brother-in-law can bully me like this at any time." The grassland women were not as shy as the Han women. Her confession was extremely passionate. Song Qing-shu had originally thought that her body would have recovered by now. When he heard the girl's passionate murmurs, it was like lightning had ignited the fire. He lowered his waist and began to savor the tender and juicy body under him. In the cave, the man's low growls mixed with the woman's sobbing moans, creating a perfect chord. After an unknown amount of time, even the bravest girl couldn't win against the battle-hardened old hooligan. Wang Yinping went from actively fighting at the beginning to throwing away her armor and throwing away her armor. In the end, she was utterly defeated and could only beg for mercy. Only then did the two of them end this fierce battle. End of this chapter. Chapter 745. Brother-in-law. Wang Yinping's face was still flushed, and she rested her head on Song Qingshu's chest. Song Qingshu looked at the trophy in his arms with the attitude of a victor. Her body was well-proportioned and smooth, and there was not a trace of excess fat on her body. It's really hard for me to imagine how Big Sister's body can withstand your torment every day. Wang Yinping had practiced martial arts since she was young, and she thought her body was much better than her sister's. But if even she couldn't withstand it, then wouldn't her sister be even more vulnerable? That's where you're wrong. Although your sister looks weak, she has practiced dancing since she was young. Her body isn't any worse than yours, and her endurance in this area is much stronger than yours. Although Song Qingshu hadn't had any further physical contact with Wang Yingebai, he was now experienced. He could tell that Wang Yingebai had an internal seduction body. Normal men wouldn't last more than 10 breaths on her body before they would lose their virginity. No wonder he hadn't heard any news of Tang Quobian having other women. With a wife like this, why would he need other women? How is that possible? Hearing that she couldn't compare to her sister in this area, Wang Yinping's face was full of disbelief. You don't believe me? When can I let you two compete on the same stage? Now that he had the antidote, Song Qingshu was in high spirits. He couldn't help but fantasize about Wang Yingebai. In your dreams, thinking of that ridiculous scene, Wang Yinping's face turned red. Brother-in-law, promise me one thing. Don't tell sister what happened today, okay? Why? Song Qingshu asked curiously. I feel like I stole something from her. Wang Yinping pursed her lips and finally acted like a spoiled child. I don't care. You're not allowed to tell her. Wait until I think about it. I'll tell her myself. Okay then, but this is too unfair to you. Song Qingshu secretly let out a sigh of relief. Actually, if she pestered him to tell Wang Yingebai what happened today, he really didn't know how to face that gentlewoman. This was for the best. Ping, it doesn't feel unfair to be with brother-in-law. Wang Yinping hugged his arm and said blissfully. Seeing her sweet expression, Song Qingshu felt regret for the first time. If she knew the truth in the future, wouldn't it be too cruel? A man and a woman hugged each other tightly and slept through the night. The next day, after dawn, Song Qingshu and Wang Yinping searched around and finally found a way out of the valley. After searching around for a while, they were pleasantly surprised to find that Wang Yinping's little red horse was still nearby. Of course, Song Qingshu's own horse had long been abandoned somewhere. The two of them rode on the same horse back to the Xingfu. Wang Yinping's love for him was at its strongest. Along the way, Song Qingshu enjoyed her tenderness, but for the time being, he did not express it. However, as they neared the city gate, Wang Yinping refused to ride the same horse as him no matter what. Song Qingshu had no choice but to dismount and lead the horse towards the city gate. Coincidentally, they went through the same city gate as before. The two soldiers guarding the city gate were also the same two soldiers. After the two entered the city, the two soldiers hurriedly ran to the side and whispered to each other. Look, I wasn't wrong, right? They really ran to the wild outside the city. Damn it, this battle is too F***king intense. The man's clothes aren't intact, and the woman's pants are also missing a big chunk. Did you notice how the Qi Kingdom's princess looked at her brother-in-law with love in her eyes? She must have been F***ed last night. F***ck. It's infuriating to compare ourselves to others. On the same night, these nobles are F***ing their beautiful sisters-in-law outside, while we can only guard the city gate and drink the northwest wind. Hee, let's get over it. This is fate. Besides, there were not many people on the street in the early morning. Song Qingshu and Wang Yinping chatted in low voices, making her tremble from time to time. Suddenly, Song Qingshu's body shook, and he stopped in his tracks. He looked at the lonely figure that was swaying and walking towards him from the side of the street. Brother Yang, long time no see. The person who came was Yanghua. Song Qingshu looked at his unshaven and slovenly appearance. Even before he got close, he could smell the strong smell of alcohol from his body. At the same time, his clothes were stained with moss that was unique to the city walls, and there was a lot of dew on his hair. Song Qingshu could not help but be shocked. Looking at his appearance, he might have sat on the city wall and drank for the whole night. How could he be so decadent in such a short time? Brother Yang? Yang Guo laughed at himself. Now, in the entire Jin Kingdom, only you'll call me Brother Yang. But is my surname really Yang? He mumbled vaguely and did not stop to chat with Song Qingshu. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly saw Wanyan Ping sitting on the horse. He could not help but be shocked and blurted out, "Goo goo." Wanyan Ping was looking at Song Qingshu affectionately when she suddenly heard Yang Guo shout. She could not help but wake up and frowned. "Are you the grandson of the king of Zhao, Wanyan Bingda?" Yang Guo had just happened to see the way Wanyan Ping looked at Song Qingshu. The way she looked at him was exactly the same as the way Xiao Longnu looked at him. Coupled with his hangover, he immediately mistook Wanyan Ping for Xiao Longnu. Now that he noticed the look of disgust on her face, he immediately woke up. "No matter what I do, Gugu will not despise me." "You're not Gugu." Yangwa did not answer Wanyan Ping's question and mumbled as he carried the wine pot and walked away. When Song Qingshu heard this, he was shocked. What grandson of the king of Zhao? What Wanyan Bingda? The king of Zhao she was talking about should be Wanyan Honglai. Yangwa could indeed be considered his grandson, but who the hell was Wanyan Bingda? "You have been recuperating at home. No wonder you did not know about this." Wanyan Ping explained. When the king of Zhao's son, Wanyan Kong, died in the Song Kingdom, his wife Munianci was pregnant at the time. When she heard the news of Wanyan Kang's death, she disappeared from the Zhao palace. Since then, no one knows where she went. Because the king of Zhao did not have an heir, they declined. Not long ago, the king of Hailing brought back Wanyan Kang's posthumous son to acknowledge his ancestors. The king of Zhao's line saw hope for revival and was extremely grateful to the king of Hailing. Oh, the name that the king of Zhao gave that posthumous son was Wanyan Bingda, which is the Yangwa that you speak of. Oh, how did Wanyan Kong become the king of Zhao's son? According to what I know, the king of Zhao's consort, Bao Shuo, was snatched back by the king of Zhao from a song man called Yang Tiexin. Isn't Wanyan Kong the child of her and her ex-husband Yang Tiexin? Song Qingshu hurriedly asked. Chapter 746. Oh no! Song Qing was startled, knowing that he had exposed himself. He smiled wryly. Perhaps I was injured too badly in Kaifeng and accidentally injured my brain. Now my memory is a bit messed up. Can you explain it to me? You were full of energy last night. You don't look like you were injured at all. Wanyan Ping's face turned red and she mumbled something. Luckily, all her attention was on Song Qing, so she didn't have any suspicions. She then began to explain to him, making Song Qing's face light up. It turned out that after Wanyan Honglai had used despicable means to obtain Bao Shuo, she had been longing for Yang Tiexin. Although Wanyan Honglai pretended to be magnanimous, he was actually very unhappy. Every time he saw Bao Shuo and Yang Tiexin's child, he felt that it was an eyesore. So he secretly had the child killed. Because of the clever method, Bao Shuo thought that the child had died of illness. However, even if she didn't resent Wanyan Honglai, she was still very sad that her child had died and was depressed all day long. It just so happened that Bao Shuo was pregnant with his own flesh and blood. Wanyan Honglai was worried that if she continued like this, both mother and child would be in trouble. So he found Elder Peng of the beggar sect and hypnotized Bao Shuo, altering her memories. When she gave birth to Wanyan Honglia's son, she thought that it was her and Yang Tiexin's son, Yang Kong. Although Wanyan Honglai wasn't a good person, he loved Bao Shuo very much. In order to untie the knot in her heart, he pushed the boat with the current and made his son Yang Kong. From then on, Wanyan Zongkong, the crown prince of the Jin Kingdom, became Yang Kong. Otherwise, no matter how magnanimous Wanyan Honglai was, he wouldn't have doted on the son of his rival in love, as if he were his own. Later, Yang Kong met Mu Nianzi and they had a child, Yanghua. However, this secret was only known by a few people in the upper echelons of the Jin Kingdom. Even Yang Kong and Mu Nianzi didn't know about it. So, Yanghua didn't know that he was a true descendant of the Jin royal family. His name was Wanyan Bingda. Because Yanghua and Yang Kong looked too similar, Wanyan Liang immediately recognized him. Wanyan Liang's father was Wanyan Zonggan, the eldest son of great ancestor Wanyan Aguda. He was Wanyan Zongkong's cousin, so he naturally knew the secret. Wanyan Liang had inherited his father's title of nobility, so he also knew the reason. So when he met Yanghua, he thought of a way to bring Yanghua back to acknowledge his ancestors. Yanghua had only recently learned of all of this, and he almost collapsed. But the records of the descendants of the imperial family were extremely detailed. In addition to the testimonies of the old members of the household, the facts were laid out in front of him. No wonder he's in such a daze. Song Qing sighed with emotion. It was like being a Chinese all one's life in his previous life. Suddenly, someone came to you and told you that you were actually Japanese. No one could stand it. Back then, Emperor Taizu was gravely ill. Considering that he was surrounded by powerful enemies, he didn't pass the throne to his own son. Instead, he wanted to choose one of his younger brothers to be his successor. Among Taizu's younger brothers, Emperor Taizong and the King of Zhao, Honglai, were the strongest. However, because the King of Zhao didn't handle the issue of having an heir, Taizu still passed the throne to Taizong. Wanyan Ping sighed as she spoke of this. Song Qing had a strange expression on his face. Wanyan Honglai had become the younger brother of great ancestor Wanyan Aguda. This world was really messy, but he had to accept it. After going through the genealogy of the Jin Kingdom, he had a general understanding of the political situation of the Jin Kingdom. Emperor Taizu passed the throne to Taizong. Later, Taizong wanted to pass the throne to his son, but various forces opposed it. So he had to return the throne to the descendants of Emperor Taizu. Seeing that there was no hope for the throne, Taizong's sons didn't want the throne to fall into the hands of Emperor Taizu's sons. In the end, after a struggle between Emperor Taizu and Taizong, the throne was passed to Emperor Taizu's young grandson, Wanyan Shi. In the early days of Emperor Shizong, the power of the imperial court was divided by Emperor Taizong's sons. Later, those people died in battle or from illness. Emperor Shizong barely regained the power of the emperor, but the long-term oppression made him weak. Soon, the power fell into the hands of Empress Peiman, Wanyan Zongxian, left Prime Minister Wanyan Zongmin, right Prime Minister Wanyan Zongbin, and Prince hailing Wanyan Liang. Among them, Wanyan Zongxian was the representative of the collateral descendants of the Jin Kingdom. Left Prime Minister Wanyan Zongmin was the representative of Emperor Taizu's line. Right Prime Minister Wanyan Zongbin was the representative of Taizong's line. Song Qing had always thought that Wanyan Liang was the weakest among them. You men are all bad. Song Qing was deep in thought when he suddenly heard Wanyan Ping say coquettishly, "Why do you suddenly say that?" Song Qing was extremely gloomy. Why do these women like to shoot all over the place? He really got shot even though he was lying down. In the past, the King of Zhao played with Princess Zhao like that. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? Originally, according to Wanyan Ping's personality, she wouldn't have cared about this kind of thing. Instead, she admired the King of Zhao's decisiveness. But after giving her body last night, she was worried and unknowingly put herself in the shoes of Princess Zhao. The King of Zhao is the King of Zhao. I am okay. Song Qing suddenly stopped breathing. He thought to himself, with his dishonorable methods, what right do he have to look down on the King of Zhao? Feeling guilty? Wanyan Ping was just saying it casually. She didn't expect Song Qing to have such a reaction. She couldn't help but feel suspicious. Little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? See how brother-in-law will deal with you. As he spoke, Song Qing made threatening gestures and was about to pounce on her. Brother-in-law, spare me, Wanyan Ping cried out and hurriedly ran forward. The two of them fooled around and unknowingly returned to Tang Quo's residence. Suddenly seeing Wanyan Ge standing at the door, Wanyan Ping jumped to the side like a startled rabbit. Song Qing also awkwardly retracted his hand that was tickling her and laughed awkwardly. You were waiting for us here? Yes, you haven't returned all night. If you hadn't returned, I would have sent someone to look for you. Wan Yingubai's gaze swept over Wan Yinping. You two have a good chat. I still have matters to attend to in the palace. I'm going back first. For some reason, Wan Yinping found that she couldn't face her sister's gentle gaze. She instinctively wanted to run away. Who knew that as soon as she turned around, a numbing feeling came from below. Her entire body froze. She then continued to climb onto the horse and hurriedly left. Seeing that Wan Yinping had left, Song Qing didn't want to face Tang Quobian's wife alone. He hurriedly said, last night, she was bitten by a snake and fell off the cliff. We spent the whole night looking for a way out in the valley. I'm exhausted. I'm going to sleep now. Really? Wan Yingubai replied calmly. When Song Qing passed by her, she couldn't help but sigh. It's fine if Ping is a child, but how can you be so careless? Her body hasn't fully grown yet. How can she withstand your torment? Chapter 747. Song Qing was dumbfounded. Before he could say anything, Wan Yinjebi turned around and left expressionlessly. It was obvious that she did not want to listen to anything he had to say. Song Qing opened his mouth and tried to hold her back several times, but he gave up in the end. He sighed in his heart and thought, that's good too. I don't have to think of ways to distance myself from her in the future. It's probably impossible for me to get close to her now. After returning to his room, Song Qing sat cross-legged on his bed and began to meditate. Last night's tumble down the slope was no less than the continuous palm attacks of dozens of martial arts masters. Even with his profound internal energy, he almost couldn't withstand it. Now that he had the antidote for rouge intoxication, he decided to rescue Song Yuanxiao and the others at night. When the time came, it would be inevitable that there would be a chaotic battle. He had to ensure that he was in his best condition. NP for all. During this period of time, he had been constantly injured. Fortunately, he had been nourished by Wan Yinping's pure yin qi last night, which allowed him to recover with half the effort. After meditating until night, Song Qing finally opened his eyes. After this period of intentionally or unintentionally distancing themselves from him, coupled with the fact that she knew about him and her sister, Wan Yinjebi no longer stepped into his room. Song Qing was also happy to be free and unfettered. No matter what he wanted to do, he didn't have to worry about how to avoid her. Seeing that it was getting late, Song Qing changed into his night clothes and used his lightness skill to rush toward the Jin Kingdom's palace. For him now, the Jin Kingdom's palace could be said to be a walk in the park. It didn't take him long to find the vicinity of the laundry yard. Song Qing hid in a nearby tree and carefully observed the defense of the courtyard for a while. Seeing that it was the same as before, he could not help but secretly nodded. He had to be careful. After all, he only had one chance. After all, the Jin Kingdom's imperial palace was heavily guarded. Once he failed, it would be difficult to rescue Song Yuanxiao and the others. Just as Song Qing was about to act, the door of the room where Song Yuanxiao and the others were imprisoned suddenly opened. A group of people came out, led by a young girl who was Wan Yinping. Two extraordinary guards followed behind her. They were the two masters whom Song Qing was afraid of when he first came to the laundry yard. During this period of time, he had already found out their identities from Wan Yinping. One was called Pusan Hutu, and the other was Pucha Shiji. They were both famous masters of the Jin Kingdom, especially Pucha Shiji. He was born with extraordinary strength and had practiced the internal strength cultivation method collected by the royal family. In terms of palm strength alone, many top masters in the world could not defeat him. Behind the two were a large number of guards, surrounding Song Yuanxiao and the others. Song Qing hurriedly steadied himself and decided to observe the situation first. Firstly, he had just had intimate contact with Wan Yinping. If he accidentally hurt her now, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Secondly, with Pusan Hutu and Pucha Shiji around, it would not be easy to rescue them. Although Song Qing was not afraid of the two with his current cultivation, this was the Jin Kingdom's palace after all. They could hold him back, But when a large number of guard arrived, it would be extremely difficult to rescue Song Yuanxiao and the others. I wonder what they're going to do. Song Qing was a little annoyed. If the Jin Kingdom wanted to kill Song Yuanxiao and the others, he would have to do it. But it didn't seem like it. After all, they were still useful. If they really wanted to kill them, they could have done it in the house without anyone knowing. Why would they bring them out? Could it be that they're going to change their place of detention? Song Qing was shocked. If that was the case, wouldn't all his plans be for naught? Soon, Song Qing let out a sigh of relief. It turned out that Song Yuanxiao and the others were not taken out of the courtyard, but to another palace in the courtyard. Song Qing's expression suddenly became strange. When he first investigated the washing clothes yard, he passed by these palaces and knew that there were many women living in them. Thinking back to how Wang Yinping had threatened Song Yuanxiao and the others, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Wang Yinping wouldn't really let Song Yuanxiao and the others become the son-in-law of the Song dynasty, would she? Master Song, 4th hero Zhang, and 6th heroine, I've given you so much time to think about it. Now, I'll give you one last chance. Are you willing to cooperate with the Jin Kingdom? Wang Yinping's voice rang out, confirming Song Qing's guess. Song Yuanxiao and the others looked at each other and saw the hesitation in each other's eyes. But no one was willing to speak. Song Qing had previously analyzed with them that the Jin Kingdom valued the Song dynasty's princesses very much and would not be willing to use them on them. It seems that the famous heroes of Wu Dang are just greedy and lecherous people. Wang Yinping immediately became angry. She waved her hand, and the guard who was waiting at the side took out the medicine they had prepared and poured it into the mouths of Song Yuanxiao and the others. Song Qing was too far away and could not save them in time. But based on his judgment, this medicine should not be poison. It was very likely that it was that kind of medicine. After thinking it through, Song Qing was not in a hurry to save them. Heroes, what you ate just now is a strange medicine from Western Xia's first-class hall. It is called Yin-Yang Harmony Powder. What is the effect of this medicine? Wang Yinping's face suddenly turned red. The three of you have a lot of experience in the world of martial artists. Even if you have never heard of it before, you should be able to guess what it is just by hearing its name. But I have to remind you that if you do not find someone to balance your yin and yang within 4 hours after taking this medicine, you will die from the evil fire. The three of you may have strong willpower and would rather die than submit, but there are 3 princesses of the Song dynasty in this room. They have also taken this medicine. If you die, there will be no one to cure them of the poison, and they will die. If the 3 of you are willing to personally kill the 3 princesses of the Song dynasty, then you will have no one to cure them of the poison for 4 hours. They will also die. Song Qing gasped in amazement when he heard this. Wang Yinping had been docile and obedient in his arms, but he did not expect that her schemes would be so vicious. Not only did she give Song Yuanxiao and the others an aphrodisiac, she even gave them a dignified reason to save the princesses. She reduced their chaotic feelings of guilt and destroyed their willpower. In truth, this combination was really brilliant. Song Qing could not help but admire this sister-in-law of his. At that moment, Song Yuanxiao and the others were shocked and angry. They started cursing, "Which you're so vicious. What kind of hero are you to use such a despicable scheme?" Wang Yinping's expression turned cold. "I've never been a hero. Bring them in." When she saw that Song Yuanxiao and the others were sent into the room, Wang Yinping ordered her subordinates, "Guard outside. Once we're done, bring them back to the prison. No one is allowed to say a single word about what happened today. If I hear even a single word about this outside, all the guards on duty tonight will be beheaded. Do you hear me?" "Yes." The expressions of the group of guards turned cold as they replied while trembling with fear. Wang Yinping nodded her head in satisfaction. Looking at the moving figures in the room, she laughed coldly and said to herself, "Tomorrow, this princess will use this scandal as a threat. I don't believe that the 3 of you won't submit." After laughing coldly a few times, Wang Yinping hurriedly left with Pu Sanhutu and Pu Cha Shijie. This time, it was Song Qing's turn to be in a difficult position. What should he do with the mess in front of him? Chapter 748. Now that Wang Yinping had left and her two top experts were gone, even though there were many guards in the laundry yard, Song Qingshu didn't place them in his eyes. But the problem was, what would he do after saving them? Thinking about the scene of him running around the palace with three lustful old men, Song Qingshu felt a wave of disgust. Actually, based on his previous experiences, he had a way to cure the poison of this aphrodisiac, but he needed a quiet place to slowly use his internal energy to cure it. But now that he was in danger, would the guards in the palace give him such a chance? Besides, he had previously cured women. Whether or not those methods would be effective on men was another matter. And even if they were effective, thinking about how to cure a few old men, Song Qingshu's body shivered. How could this process compare to curing 1,000 charming and soft girls? Not to mention, there were still 3 other poison princesses. Was he really going to leave them and let them burn with desire to death? Song Qingshu weighed the pros and cons and finally made a deceptive decision. Wait and see. He would first wait for Song Yuanxiao and the others to cure the poison inside before he went to save them. Even though this seemed like a huge scandal, and if it got back to the Southern Song dynasty, Wu Dang would not be able to establish itself in Jianghu. But this matter was known to the heavens and earth. Apart from the people involved, only Wang Yinping and a few others knew. These normal guards wouldn't dare to leak even half a word. Therefore, it was completely possible to cover up this matter. As for the 3 Song dynasty princesses, he had long heard about the incident in the laundry yard. When the Jin invaded Bianjing, they captured a large number of imperial concubines, princesses, and noble ladies. On the way back to the north, they were humiliated. To put it bluntly, other than a few infants who were still in swaddling clothes, the princesses of the laundry yard were already ruined flowers and willows. One more or one less wouldn't make any difference to them, and they wouldn't commit suicide like a normal virgin. I can only inconvenience the 3 princesses. Song Qingshu sighed to himself. After all, he was a man and not a god, and he had no other choice. But he was still a bit worried. He found a place with the weakest guards and used Qin Gong to sneak in through the skylight. Looking down from the beam, the scene that greeted his eyes almost made Song Qingshu have a nosebleed. He saw Song Yuanxiao and the other 2 sitting in a circle meditating with flushed faces. But the 3 gorgeously dressed women were half undone, revealing a large portion of their snow-white bodies. They kept entangling around the 3, twisting and turning in their embrace. Song Qingshu sized up the 3 princesses. They didn't seem to be young anymore. They were probably in their early 30s. However, they had pretty faces and could be considered beauties. Coupled with their special identities, they were quite charming overall. Song Qingshu's eyes almost popped out of them. The words that Song Yuanxiao forced out after a long time almost made Song Qingshu burst into laughter. What kind of situation was this? How could he still say such nerdy things? Dear big brother, our bodies are so hot, so uncomfortable. What answered him was a seductive voice. Even Song Qingshu, who had experienced a lot of women before, felt his body go limp, let alone Song Yuanxiao and the others. Good brother, our bodies are so hot, so uncomfortable. What answered him was a coquettish voice. Even someone like Song Qingshu, who had been through a lot, felt half his body go limp, let alone Song Yuanxiao and the others. Song Qingshu noticed that the last bit of clarity in the eyes of Song Yuanxiao and the others had faded. He knew that what was going to happen would happen. He didn't have a habit of peeping, so he quietly went back the way he came. I can't let them know that I just went there. Otherwise, if they find out that I just stood by and watched, I won't be able to keep my face. They'll all come after me with a knife. Song Qingshu secretly made up his mind. Song Qingshu stood guard outside for a while. When he heard the sounds in the palace gradually die down, he knew that it was about time. He sneaked back. He couldn't wait for them to finish before going in. At that time, the guards outside would also go in. The alluring scene in the palace made Song Qingshu secretly click his tongue. He saw that Song Yuanxiao and the others had already woken up and dressed up. Their faces were full of guilt and self-blame, and they kept apologizing to the three princesses. On the other hand, the three princesses were very calm, as if they were already used to this kind of thing. Song Qingshu's figure flashed, and he struck the sleeping acupuncture points of the three princesses. Looking at the astonished Song Yuanxiao and the others, he pretended to be sorrowful. Qingshu came late and caused the three of you to suffer. Suffer? Song Yuanxiao and the others blushed. Even though they were feeling guilty, they couldn't help but admit that the feeling just now had nothing to do with suffering. The few of us have done such a shameful thing. How can we still have the face to go back and see Master? Song Yuanxiao was ashamed and angry at the same time. He raised his palm and chopped down on the top of his head. Song Qingshu was startled. He only relaxed when he realized that his hands were powerless. He couldn't help but say, "This matter can't be blamed on you. You can only blame the genes for being too shameless and cunning." That's right, especially that witch Wan Yinping. As a woman, she actually thought of such a vicious plan. Zhang Songshi was so angry that his whole body was trembling. Song Qingshu thought to himself, "If you knew that Wan Yinping is already my woman, who knows what you would think?" He took the opportunity to comfort them. "If you all commit suicide now, other than making your enemies happy, it still won't help the situation. The genes can still use this matter to smear Wu Dang's name. And with the evidence of your suicide, I'm afraid the world will have to believe it even if they don't want to. Then what should we do?" Lighting had already lost his soul. His mind was a mess, and he asked subconsciously, "Flatly deny this matter." Song Qingshu said quickly, "I've already found the antidote for Rouge Drunk. Now I'll save you all. When the time comes, the genes can only suffer in silence. Without evidence, they can't carry out their conspiracy." This, Song Yuanxiao suddenly felt a little moved. "Big brother, what Qingshu said makes a lot of sense. Our personal honor is small, but Wu Dang's reputation is big." Zhang Songshi hurriedly said. "No," Song Yuanxiao said in a low voice. "It's easy for us to leave, but what about them? The genes will definitely vent their anger on us, and they'll suffer inhumane abuse. Although we can hide it from the world, we can't hide it from our own hearts. We cultivators cultivate our own hearts. How can we just leave after hurting them?" Zhang Songshi and Lighting nodded. "That's right. Leaving like this is really unchivalrous." "Then what do you want to do?" Song Qingshu was also speechless. Now that time was tight. They were actually so pedantic. "We've heard that the princesses of the Song dynasty were kidnapped by the genes. Now that we know they're in the laundry yard, if we can save the princesses and bring them back to our country, first, we can save our Han people's face, and second, we can save them from the abyss of suffering. This can also reduce the sins we've committed today." Song Yuanxiao couldn't help but look ashamed. Song Qingshu was immediately dumbfounded. "It's easy for you to say. Just to save the three of you, I've already racked my brains. There are at least 10 or 20 princesses in the laundry yard. How can I save them?" Chapter 749. Song Yuanxiao shook his head. "Qingshu, I've already made up my mind. If you can't save all these princesses, I won't leave either." Zhang Songshi and Lighting hesitated for a moment before expressing their agreement. "Don't tell me you don't care about Wudong's reputation anymore?" Song Qingshu was angry and anxious. He really didn't know what to say. "Qingshu, you don't have to say anything." Zhang Songshi also spoke up. "Since we've committed a mistake, we should face it calmly. Master is not an ordinary person. After knowing the situation here, he will definitely agree with our actions." Song Qingshu was secretly impressed when he saw how the three of them had changed from fear to determination. He then looked at the three pitiful princesses on the ground and thought back to when he read about the shame of Jing Kong in his previous life. His heart was filled with righteous indignation, and he thought, "Fine, let me defy the heavens and change fate." Although his blood was boiling, he still maintained a clear mind and quickly analyzed. To save these princesses, we need a long-term plan. I'm afraid it won't be possible today. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, I'll have to trouble you to suffer here for a period of time. And that which Wan Yinping. Zhang Songshi was instantly overjoyed. Qing Shu, we're already overjoyed that you're willing to take such a huge risk to save them. This little bit of hardship is nothing. However, that which will definitely use this as a threat tomorrow to force us to learn the secret arts of Wudong. How should we deal with this? In Lighting said with a worried expression. That's easy, Song Qingshu said quickly. When the time comes, you'll give her 9 true and 1 false incantation to ensure that she can deal with it while retaining the essence of Wudong's unique skills. You're more familiar with Wudong's martial arts than I am, so you'll have to figure out how to balance it out. Zhang Songshi couldn't help but be overjoyed. This is a brilliant plan. Qingshu, how did you think of this? Who told you to not read the legend of the Condor heroes? Song Qingshu cursed in his heart and quickly said, Now is not the time to talk about this. The guards outside are about to come in. I'll be leaving first. Take care of yourselves. He unsealed the pressure points of the 3 princesses on the ground, and Song Qingshu's body floated away like a feather. Qingshu's qing gong is truly unparalleled. Zhang Songshi couldn't help but exclaim, Fourth brother, you flatter me. Although Yuan Xiao said this, he couldn't help but show a trace of pride on his face. Eldest senior brother, fourth senior brother, I have a presumptuous request. In Lighting suddenly stammered. What is it? Song Yuan Xiao and Zhang Songshi looked at each other. They didn't know what was making him feel so awkward. About today's matter. If we die in the Jin Kingdom, it'll be fine. But if we're lucky enough to return to Wudong sect, I hope you two can keep this a secret in front of Boo Hui. In Lighting looked embarrassed. Don't worry, we will definitely keep our mouths shut in front of sister-in-law. Song Yuan Xiao and Zhang Songshi's faces turned red, thinking that this wasn't something to be proud of. Weren't we the same as you? Song Yuan Xiao and Zhang Songshi blushed. This isn't something to be proud of. Aren't we the same as you? At this time, the 3 princesses had already woken up. The guards outside were also coming in, so the 3 of them shut their mouths and didn't say another word. Coming out of the laundry yard, Song Qingshu walked around the back palace in boredom. He was having a headache. If he wanted to save the poor princesses of the Song dynasty, there were 2 problems. The first was how to save so many people from the heavily guarded palace. The second was how to safely transport them out of the city. No matter what, Song Qingshu was at his wit's end. Let's find a chance to get in touch with the princesses of the laundry yard. I need to know how many of them are there and their situations. Only then can I make a plan. Song Qingshu was so frustrated that he finally had an idea. With such a big commotion today, there was no way he could go to the laundry yard. Song Qingshu decided to go back to Tang Quo's mansion first, but after a few steps, he suddenly had an idea. He changed his direction and went to Xiaox Xingwo's residence. Song Qingshu didn't know why he suddenly decided to go there. Maybe he wanted to try his luck and see if he could meet the yellow-robed woman again? But he knew this idea was ridiculous. Last time, the yellow-robed woman left without a sound. Would she come back to see a little eunuch? In a dark corner, Song Qingshu quietly put on Xiaox Xingwo's human skin mask and swaggered into the imperial palace with Xiaox Xingwo's face. He felt a little diffident in his heart. Xiaox Xingwo had disappeared for a few days. Did anyone suspect anything? Also, he had an appointment with the Empress once every 3 days. He didn't know what the consequences would be if he stood her up. Xiaox Xingwo's residence was pitch black. It didn't seem like anyone was there. But with Song Qingshu's cultivation, he could faintly sense a faint aura inside. He didn't know if it was the yellow-robed woman or someone else with ulterior motives. After all, Xiaox Xingwo's death was unclear. He didn't know who in this big palace wanted his life. Song Qingshu had to be careful. On the surface, Song Qingshu pretended to be unguarded and swaggered inside. Just as he pushed the door open, a cold light flashed in front of his eyes. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment and did not fight back. Instead, he pretended to be panic-stricken and said, "Heroine, spare me." He cursed inwardly as soon as he spoke. Logically, a little eunuch like Xiaox Xingwo shouldn't be able to tell whether the person hiding in the dark was a man or a woman. Sure enough, the cold voice of the yellow-robed woman came to his ears. "How do you know it's me?" Song Qingshu rolled his eyes and came up with an idea. He pretended to be confused. If it's not the heroine, who else could it be? Humph. The yellow-robed woman withdrew her long sword and seemed to accept his explanation. She turned around and walked into the inner room. It could be seen that she was staggering and her face was paler than before. Song Qingshu asked subconsciously, "Heroine, are you hurt again?" "It's none of your business." The yellow-robed woman leaned against the bed and sat down. Although she looked tired and weak, her peerless beauty didn't diminish. When Song Qingshu looked at her, she also raised her head to look at him. Noticing Song Qingshu's gaze, she was stunned at first, and then said angrily, "If you look at me again, I'll dig your eyes out." Song Qingshu hurriedly withdrew his gaze and said with some dissatisfaction, "Beauty is for people to look at. I don't know why you were so excited." The yellow-robed woman was so angry that she laughed. "You are an eunuch. What do you know about beauty?" Song Qingshu immediately shouted, "The eunuch is not missing his eyes. Why can't I see beauty?" The yellow-robed woman's pale cheeks had a faint blush. She pursed her lips and snorted. "Shameless." Chapter 750. I found that I underestimated you before. The yellow-robed woman leaned against the headboard, her eyes wide open as if deep in thought. Song Qingshu's heart jumped, and he said unnaturally, "What do you mean? I've secretly come back a few times in the past few days, but I was surprised to find that you haven't come back." The suspicion in the yellow-robed woman's eyes grew stronger. "You have a lot of secrets." Song Qingshu was secretly shocked. In this period of time, in order to get the antidote for rouge intoxication, he had spent all his time on Wan Yinping. He didn't have the time to pretend to be a eunuch. His eyes turned and he thought, "Hee, I didn't think that heroine would care about me so much. I'm really touched. Ever since I was young, I've always been looked down upon by others. Now that I can receive Fairy Sister's care, even if I die right now, my life will be worth it. Who cares about you?" The yellow-robed woman's eyebrows rose and her cheeks reddened. She was obviously annoyed with Song Qingshu's words. Song Qingshu deliberately put on a confused expression. "Fairy Sister, if you don't care about me, then why do you come every day? Who wants to come every day?" The yellow-robed woman sat up with some annoyance. "If it wasn't for the fact that I haven't unsealed your acupuncture point, I wouldn't have bothered to come back. Also, don't call me Fairy Sister." Song Qingshu saw that her face was flushed and her eyes were wandering. He couldn't help but secretly exclaim, "She really is a fairy with a heavenly charm." Noticing his gaze, the yellow-robed woman became annoyed again. Song Qingshu hurriedly said, "If I don't call you Fairy Sister, then what should I call you? I can't keep calling you heroine, right?" The yellow-robed woman hesitated and said in a low voice, "My surname is Yang." "Nonsense. Of course I know your surname is Yang." Song Qingshu's teeth itched with hatred. He had put in so much effort to know her first name and not her surname. But he also understood that in this era, other than the people closest to her, women generally wouldn't tell others their names. He couldn't find any excuse to ask. "Come here." The yellow-robed woman beckoned to him. "What?" Song Qingshu didn't react for a moment. The yellow-robed woman frowned. She didn't know why she had angered her so easily. She said in annoyance, "If you want to bleed to death, you don't have to come here." Song Qingshu then remembered that he had been hit by her unique vein sealing technique. If it wasn't released in time, he would bleed to death. Even though he had moved his acupoints to evade when the yellow-robed woman had sealed them, he naturally couldn't show it now. "Are you really so cruel as to kill me? I always thought that you were joking with me," Song Qingshu said in surprise. Song Qingshu ran to her side and immediately smelled a faint fragrance that was neither orchid nor musk. A thought immediately appeared in his mind, and he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Are these women's cosmetics pickled? Why do they all smell so good? Noticing that Song Qingshu was lost in thought again, the yellow-robed woman couldn't help but want to laugh. It wasn't strange for other men to be dazed by her beauty, but this was clearly not the case for this little eunuch. Since she knew him, she found that he would be lost in thought from time to time. He really was a somewhat silly little eunuch. Casually sealing a few acupuncture points on his chest, the yellow-robed woman snorted. Okay, now you don't have to worry about bleeding from your orifices for the time being. Thank you, Miss Yang. Song Qingshu suddenly came back to his senses, and his smile suddenly became a bit stiff. Wait, what do you mean by temporarily? Seeing his deflated appearance, the yellow-robed woman couldn't help but purse her lips and smile. Temporary is temporary. Although I help you unseal the previous death acupuncture point so that you won't immediately bleed from your 7 orifices, I also sealed a new death acupuncture point. If I don't unseal it for you after a while, you will still bleed from your 7 orifices. Song Qingshu's expression suddenly changed. He went up and hugged the yellow-robed woman's legs. He cried and made a fuss. My great aunt, you can't play with me like this. Hey, what are you doing? Let go of me. The yellow-robed woman was angry and anxious. She tried to shake him off several times, but failed. Song Qingshu hugged her legs tightly and rubbed his face on her legs. He took the opportunity to wipe his snot and tears on her skirt. Only then did he secretly vent his hatred. I've always been scared by you. I have to take advantage of you to relieve the hatred in my heart. If you don't let go, don't blame me for being impolite. The yellow-robed woman had never been so close to a man since she was a child. Although the other party was just a eunuch, her face was still as red as an apple. Although this woman's mouth is a bit fierce, her heart is really not bad. If it was someone else who was cruel and merciless, they would have kicked this little eunuch away. Song Qingshu saw that he had taken advantage of enough. He stopped while he was ahead and let go of the yellow-robed woman before she completely exploded. The yellow-robed woman's chest rose and fell violently. She couldn't help but glare at Song Qingshu fiercely. After a long time, she suppressed the anger in her heart. If it was another man who dared to treat me like this, I would have killed him long ago. Seeing that it was an unintentional mistake, I will temporarily spare your life. However, you cannot escape punishment. Since your hands touched me, cut off your hands to apologize to me. Song Qingshu was immediately dumbfounded. He had just praised her kindness. How come he was slapped in the face in the blink of an eye? Seeing his dumbfounded appearance, the yellow-robed woman's lips moved slightly, but she quickly covered it up. Of course, if you can do one thing for me, I won't pursue this matter. Don't say one thing. Even if it was 10, I would agree. Song Qingshu hurriedly put on an expression of fear and trepidation. Inside, he was thinking, with the yellow-robed woman's martial arts, what matter would she need the help of a little eunuch to do? Last time, from the words of those 2 little eunuchs, you seem to be a favored person in front of the empress. The yellow-robed woman casually mentioned. Song Qingshu's heart jumped. For a moment, he didn't know what she was planning. I can't be considered a favored person. It's just that the empress sometimes summons me to do some things. Then you must know the way to the empress palace? The yellow-robed woman's eyes were burning. Why did it sound more and more strange? It felt like she was going to assassinate someone. Song Qingshu wanted to say he didn't know, but that was too fake. Last time, she clearly had 2 little eunuchs take him to the empress palace. Know. If you know, then you know. If you don't know, then you don't know. The yellow-robed woman was very dissatisfied with his wording and coldly said, Immediately take me to the empress palace, and I won't pursue your rude behavior. Chapter 751. My great aunt, you're trying to kill me. Song Qingshu cried out in alarm. The yellow-robed woman raised her eyebrows and said, What great aunt? It's so unpleasant. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, Heroine, fairy sister, if I don't take you there, you will cut off my hands at most, and you will not unblock my acupuncture points at most. But if I take you to the empress's bedchamber to assassinate her, it will be a crime of 9 generations. Song Qingshu was very satisfied with his performance. He felt that if he traveled back to his previous life, it would be easy for him to win the Best Actor award. You only need to take me to the empress's bedchamber, and the rest has nothing to do with you. Who will know that you will take me there? Seeing that Song Qingshu still refused, the yellow-robed woman had to explain patiently, You can rest assured that I am definitely not going to assassinate her. Then what are you going to do? Song Qing asked tentatively. That's none of your business. Seeing that he kept making excuses, the yellow-robed woman became a little impatient. Are you going to take me there or not? If you take me there, you may not be in trouble. If you don't take me there, you will be in trouble immediately. You choose. Song Qing hesitated. Looking at Empress Pei Man's attitude toward Xiao Xingguo, she seemed to be planning something. He originally thought that he had no chance to take advantage of it. If he took the yellow-robed woman there at this time, it would definitely destroy her plan. But if he didn't take the yellow-robed woman there, he couldn't deal with it now. Okay, I will take the heroine there, but I hope the heroine will keep her promise. Song Qing showed a helpless look, but he finally agreed because he was also curious about why the yellow-robed woman was looking for Empress Pei Man. In this way, the yellow-robed woman held Song Qing hostage and walked all the way to the Empress's bedchamber. After tossing around in the laundry yard for most of the night, the sky was gradually turning white. Seeing this, the yellow-robed woman frowned slightly and stopped Song Qing. Instead of continuing to walk slowly, she reached out to grab his collar and began to take him back and forth in the imperial palace with lightness skills. Along the way, in addition to telling her the direction from time to time, Song Qing spent the rest of the time focusing on the fragrance on her body. Intentionally or unintentionally, he leaned against her to feel the soft and touching touch of her delicate body. After being bullied by her for so long, he had to collect some interest, right? The yellow-robed woman also noticed his actions, but because he was a eunuch, she didn't think in that direction. She just thought that he had never seen lightness skills and was afraid at this time. So she leaned against him and let him do what he wanted. With Song Qing guidance, she avoided the patrolling guards of the imperial palace and finally successfully entered the empress bedchamber. Who knew that the empress wasn't inside? Song Qing couldn't help but give a big sigh of relief. He liked this kind of happy ending the most. But he hadn't been happy for long when a sound came from outside the imperial palace. Hearing the movements of the eunuchs and maids, it seemed that the empress had returned. The yellow-robed woman's gaze swept around the hall. She grabbed Song Qing and flew to a beam on the roof, using the shadow of the beam to hide the two of them. Now that you aren't flying, you should let go of your hand. The yellow-robed woman's gaze landed on Song Qing's hand that was wrapped around her waist. Her gaze instantly became unfriendly. Just now I was nervous and carelessly hugged you. Please forgive me, fairy. Song Qing embarrassedly let go of his hand. Shut up, someone has come in. Don't talk. The yellow-robed woman reached out to cover his mouth and focused all her attention on what was below. With her small hand covering his mouth, Song Qing's heart couldn't help but sway. That white and smooth skin, that soft feeling, made him sigh again and again. So playing dumb has this kind of benefit. Song Qing suddenly became mischievous and stuck out his tongue to lick her palm. The yellow-robed woman only felt her hand being touched by something warm and wet. She immediately pulled her hand back. Seeing Song Qing's cheap smile, she finally realized what it was. She couldn't help but be angry and shouted in a low voice, "What are you doing?" Song Qing chuckled and said, "I couldn't hold it in for a moment, so when the yellow-robed woman heard his nonsense and saw his expression, she couldn't help but become angry. However, the people outside had already come in, so it wasn't convenient for her to act up. She could only suppress her anger. Worried that the other would do something else, she casually sealed his acupuncture point to prevent him from moving. Song Qing was already prepared. He shifted his acupuncture point and dodged the ceiling. However, he still pretended that his acupuncture point had been sealed and looked towards the door of the hall. A group of eunuchs and palace maids were in front, clearing the way. Empress Pei Man was surrounded in the middle. In the middle, her phoenix-like eyes were filled with power. She was sexy with a hint of nobility, and her temperament was still so unique. However, Song Qing's gaze was more focused on the two little palace maids behind her. He hadn't seen them before when he came to the Empress Palace. It seemed that they were new palace maids. The reason these two palace maids attracted Song Qing's attention was because they were outrageously beautiful. The surrounding palace maids were like heaven and earth compared to them. There was also a faint worry hidden between their brows. They looked especially lovely and moving. That soft temperament was completely different from the passionate and unrestrained Lady Jinren. They looked more like daughters born by the rivers of Jiangnan. Song Qing-shu suddenly felt the yellow-robed woman's body tremble. He couldn't help turning his head to look and saw that she was staring fixedly at the two little palace maids with a deliberately suppressed excitement. Why is she having such a big reaction? Could it be that these two little palace maids are her long-lost daughters? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but speculate maliciously. Of course, he quickly denied this speculation. After all, no matter how early the women of this world married, the age difference between mother and daughter would not be so small. Even though the yellow-robed woman was much older than the two little palace maids, she was not old enough to be their mother. Empress Peiman walked straight to the phoenix couch and sat down. The two little palace maids shyly knelt in front of her. Empress Peiman opened her mouth and was about to say something when a commotion came from outside the door. What is going on outside? Empress Peiman's brow furrowed. Empress, it is His Highness Wei Wang. He insisted on barging in. A eunuch stammered. Dog servant. Ben Wang came in to pay respects to Empress. What is barging in? A young man, wearing an official robe, swaggered in. Hearing the eunuch's words, he kicked his but without another word. A trace of anger flashed across Empress Peiman's face, but she quickly concealed it. She lightly waved her hand. Xiao Zhuozi misspoke. Come, take it off and open your mouth 20 times. On the beam, Song Qing-shu's heart moved. It was clearly this Wei Wang who had been rude first. Peiman, as the Empress, not only did not reprimand him, she punished her own subordinate. What was the background of this person that even the Empress was so afraid of him? End of this chapter. Chapter 752. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but find it strange. Now that Shizong was weak, the power of the court was divided between the Empress and a few powerful officials. With Empress Peiman's current status and power, there was no reason for her to be so afraid of a young man. Furthermore, she was the other's elder. It turned out that Shizong's health was not very good. He had been the emperor for so long and only had one son. Peiman's son had been made the crown prince. Unfortunately, good times did not last long. The crown prince died not long after he was born. Since then, Peiman had never had another son. Instead, another concubine in the inner palace had given birth to a prince for Shizong, who was now Wei Wang. Even though Wei Wang was not a legitimate son, he was Shizong's only son. Anyone with eyes could see that he would inherit the throne in the future. Wei Wang's mother and son were also clear about all this. Wei Wang's mother and son were slightly more restrained. Wei Wang was not so shrewd and showed everything in his heart. Peiman had been humiliated by him many times, but she chose to avoid it each time. Of course, the reason for all this was unknown to Song Qing-shu now. He would only be able to understand the complicated relationships in the palace after he returned and investigated. Your Highness is indeed fair in rewards and punishments. It's good enough that you didn't kill such a disrespectful servant. Wei Wang laughed. Empress Peiman was secretly angry. She said coolly, "What is Wei Wang doing here so early in the morning?" "Oh," Wei Wang replied unconcernedly. "I'm here to pay my respects to your Highness." Wei Wang is considerate. Wei Wang clearly had no intention of paying his respects even now, but Empress Peiman acted as though he had already paid his respects. Wei Wang smiled lightly. There was not a trace of respect in his expression. Suddenly, he stretched lazily as though he was tired from standing. Without greeting the Empress, he pulled a chair to the side and sat down. Then, he called for the palace maid to serve tea, as though he was in his own home. The palace maid glanced at the Empress. Seeing that the Empress was expressionless, she ran over to bring a cup of tea. Who knew that Wei Wang picked it up and swirled it in his mouth for a while before spitting it back into the cup. Empress Peiman's eyelids twitched. Is this high-quality West Lake Longjing not worthy of Wei Wang's discerning eyes? Wei Wang laughed strangely. The tea is good, but this prince just experienced an assassination with poison not long ago. I don't dare to eat this now. It's better to be careful. Empress Pei Man suppressed her anger. From Wei Wang's words, does it mean that I will poison you? I don't dare, but it's always good to be careful. After all, I am the only son left in my father's family. King Wei pretended to apologize as he added a sentence with a hidden meaning. As expected, Pei Man's expression changed. Wei Wang's words hit the sore spot in her heart. If Wei Wang wasn't Shizong's only son, how could she allow him to be so arrogant? Thinking of her dead child, Empress Pei Man's complexion became even worse. Since the greetings are over, this prince will take his leave first. Wei Wang also knew that this woman was powerful. He reckoned that it was enough for today, so he stood up and bade farewell. In the end, when he passed by the two little palace maids kneeling on the ground, he accidentally caught a glimpse of the appearance of the two women. His eyes instantly revealed a trace of amazement. He could not help but blurt out, "There are actually such stunning beauties in this world. And what's even rarer is a pair of sisters." Although the two women had their own characteristics, there were still some similarities between their eyebrows. The Prince of Wei had seen countless women. The relationship between the two girls is revealed. Before Empress Pei Man could say anything, Wei Wang spoke up. "Empress, Bin Wang's food just happens to have two maids who serve tea and water. Bin Wang thinks that these two little palace maids are not bad. Would Empress be willing to part with them?" Empress Pei Man looked at him with a faint smile. "Wei Wang can have any of my palace maids, but these two have special identities. It's best that Wei Wang doesn't have any ideas about them." Wei Wang first stilled and then sneered. "What identity can two palace maids have? Other than father, is there any other woman in the palace that has a higher status than this prince?" Seeing Empress Pei Man's expression change, Wei Wang smiled and added, "Of course, Her Majesty isn't one of them." It would have been better if he hadn't added that. Now that he explained, anyone with eyes could tell that he was targeting the Empress. Empress Pei Man's gaze froze, and then she smiled. "Wei Wang, if you really want them, I won't stop you. But don't blame me for saying this first. You won't be able to bear the consequences. This woman really knows how to play tricks." Wei Wang sneered inwardly. "Not just two palace maids when I ascend the throne, according to the rules of the grasslands. Other than my biological mother, won't all of father's women be mine? At that time, you'll just be a plaything under this prince. This prince wants to see what the consequences are." Wei Wang stood up and walked over to the two palace maids. Since Her Majesty doesn't mind, then this prince will accept them. Seeing Wei Wang approaching, the two kneeling maids seemed to be stunned. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Then they looked back at the Empress, as if asking for help. Who knew that Pei Man was expressionless, as if she didn't see what was happening in front of her. "Wei Wang, don't be rash, we are—" The older of the two said in a hurry. Who knew that halfway through, Wei Wang would flick his sleeve and cut her off. "This prince is not interested in who you are. Even if you're the seven fairies, you have to go back with this prince." He sneered as he reached out to grab the two maids' hands. The two palace maids exclaimed and instinctively wanted to dodge to the side. Who knew that after kneeling for so long, the moment they stood up, their legs would go numb and they immediately fell to the ground. Wei Wang laughed sinisterly and took the opportunity to grab the two maids' chests. His actions were extremely obscene. Song Qingshu frowned and was hesitating if he should secretly teach this absurd prince a lesson. But he was also worried that the yellow-shirt woman would see something. He looked back and was shocked to see that the yellow-shirt woman was biting her lips and trembling. Her fingers were clenched so tightly that they were turning white. Why is her reaction so big? Is it natural for women to not be able to see such obscene methods? Song Qingshu was confused. Die, pervert! Who knew that at this moment, the yellow-shirt woman would suddenly shout angrily and stab at Wei Wang with her sword. Damn! Song Qingshu was instantly dumbfounded. Wasn't she here to look for the Empress? Why did she run off to assassinate Wei Wang? She usually didn't look like such an impulsive person. The people below were clearly frightened by the sudden appearance of the yellow-shirt woman. A group of palace maids and eunuchs screamed and scattered to the side, leaving only Wei Wang in the middle of the arena. It was as if he was scared silly. Looking at the sword that was getting closer and closer, he couldn't even move a finger. Just as the yellow-shirt woman was about to stab Wei Wang, a shout suddenly came from the side. "You're courting death." The bodyguard that had been following Wei Wang blocked the yellow-shirt woman's sword with his saber. The bodyguard protected Wei Wang behind him. He raised his saber and attacked the yellow-clothed woman's body. In a flash, the two of them exchanged more than 10 moves. Song Qing-shu was secretly shocked. This bodyguard looked very ordinary before, but he didn't expect him to be such a top expert. The yellow-shirt woman was actually gradually falling into a disadvantage. Even though she was injured, looking at the bodyguard's cultivation, even if the yellow-shirt woman wasn't injured, she might not be able to gain any advantage. At this time, the bodyguards outside the hall also rushed in. First, they protected Empress Payman. Then, a portion of them split up and secretly surrounded the two people fighting in the middle. Seeing that more and more bodyguards were surrounding her, the yellow-shirt woman was secretly anxious. She knew that the situation was becoming more and more disadvantageous for her. She wanted to leave, but the nameless bodyguard was very difficult to deal with. She tried to rush out several times, but was blocked by him. After a few rounds, she became more and more passive. Song Qing-shu hid on the beam and narrowed his eyes. Although he didn't understand why the yellow-shirt woman was so impulsive, he couldn't let her be captured by the Jin Kingdom's bodyguards. However, whether it was the nameless bodyguard or the yellow-shirt woman, they were both experts. If he interfered, it would be difficult for him to not be discovered. Seeing Wei Wang not far away from the two of them, Song Qing-shu had an idea. He flicked his finger and a wisp of sword chi shot towards Wei Wang. Wei Wang suddenly let out an earth-shattering scream. When a nameless bodyguard heard Wei Wang scream, he couldn't help but be shocked. He took the opportunity to look back and saw that Wei Wang was covering his ears. There was still blood seeping out from between his fingers. He didn't know where he was injured. How could he be in the mood to care about the yellow-shirt woman? He quickly flew to Wei Wang's side and asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" How could the yellow-shirt woman let go of such a good opportunity? Her figure flashed, and she flew out of the hall. The other bodyguards couldn't stop her. The yellow-shirt woman jumped a few times and quickly disappeared into the distance. When she left, she looked back at the Empress' bedroom in confusion. Just now, there's clearly someone secretly helping her, but she didn't notice that there was someone else hiding in the hall. Could it be that the hidden expert's martial arts had reached such a high level? Or could it be someone from the Emperor's side? In the hall, Wei Wang's wounds had already been bandaged. At this time, how could he still be in the mood to flirt with the two little palace maids? He sneered at the Empress and said, "Hee. Luckily, Imperial Father was worried that something would happen to this prince and assigned the shadow guard to this prince. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to step out of this room alive today." Empress Payman replied indifferently. From Wei Wang's words, could it be that you think that this assassin was sent by me? Whether it was or not, your Highness knows very well in your heart. Wei Wang sneered. If this Empress remembers correctly, that assassin just shouted die. Pervert, right? Furthermore, the assassin was a woman. Could it be that His Highness had gotten himself involved in some sort of romantic debt? Empress Payman's voice turned cold. Speaking of which, this Empress has yet to pursue the matter of your Highness provoking the assassin. Wei Wang suddenly stood up. The shadow guard behind him hurriedly stopped him and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, there was an assassin in the palace previously. This woman today seems to be similar to the description of the assassin a few days ago." Wei Wang frowned. "All right, this prince will investigate this matter clearly today. Someone, bring the guard in front of the hall. Wanyan Tessie, to this prince." There was an assassin in the Emperor's bedroom, and it even involved Wei Wang. Wanyan Tessie, who was in charge of the palace's defense, had already rushed over. Not long after, he ran in. "This lowly servant Wanyan Tessie greets your Highness the Empress and your Highness the Prince of Wei." End of this chapter. Chapter 753. Song Qing looked down and saw that the person who came in had square eyes, a wide nose, and a fierce face. The most eye-catching thing was the long scar near his eye. This person was very famous in the capital, and even Song Qing had heard of some of his deeds. It was said that this scar was caused by an assassin when he was saving Jin Shizong. Wanyan Tessie, what are you doing as the inspector of the palace? The assassin has sneaked into the empress's bedroom and even tried to assassinate me. Wei Wang pointed at the scar on his face and roared at Wanyan Tessie. Wanyan Tessie hurriedly knelt on the ground, and cold sweat dripped down his face. Please forgive me, Your Highness Wei Wang, please forgive me. This female assassin's martial arts are too high. Previously, we gathered the strength of many masters and even asked the chief steward to seriously injure her. We thought that she had taken advantage of the chaos to escape. Who knew that she would be so bold and still dare to stay in the palace? Forgive me. The king of Wei was enraged. You want to forgive me for such a big mistake, and that's it? If something were to happen to this prince today, how many lives do you have to compensate for it? Someone flog Wanyan Tessie 80 times. Everyone looked at each other. If an ordinary person was flogged 80 times, he would probably go straight to hell. Even if Wanyan Tessie had martial arts, he would still be half dead after being flogged 80 times. More importantly, Wanyan Tessie was the inspector of the palace, the general of the palace guards, and in charge of the entire imperial army. His identity was not to be trifled with. How could he be flogged so easily? Wei Wang saw that no one moved after he gave the order and couldn't help but sneer. What? Do you want to rebel? You don't even listen to my orders? At this point, Wanyan Tessie saw that there was no way to settle things peacefully. He had to bite the bullet and stand up. Please forgive me for being rude. My identity is special, and I am directly commanded by the emperor. I don't need to listen to other people's orders. I will definitely give your highness an explanation for today's matter. Now I have to go and catch the assassin. Please forgive me for not accompanying you. At this time, Wanyan Tessie was also secretly angry. With his identity, everyone in the capital treated him with respect. Today he was humiliated by a young boy. At the same time, he was also very clear that he was the emperor's confidant. Wei Wang had tried to entice him several times, but he didn't respond. Instead, he was close to the emperor's younger brother, Chongshang Prince Wanyan Yuan. Wei Wang and Chongshang Prince Wanyan Yuan had always been at odds, so it was natural that Wei Wang hated him. Now, Wei Wang was likely to use this as a pretext to get rid of him. He couldn't be so stupid. He had to deal with this matter first, and when the emperor and Chongshang Prince heard this, they would protect him. Seeing the conflict between Wanyan Tessie and Wei Wang, Pei Man, who was not far away, remained expressionless. However, the slight smile on her face betrayed her true feelings. Make a scene, the bigger the better. And, Prince Wei took out something from his bosom and waved it in the air. Wanyan Tessie, don't you think that only Imperial Father can deal with you? Open your dog eyes wide and see what this thing is. Open your dog eyes and see what this is. Song Qingzong, who was on the beam, was hurt by the shining golden token in his hand. When everyone saw the token in his hand, their expressions changed. They all knelt on the ground. Long live the emperor! Song Qing saw that even Empress Pei Man stood up and saluted. He was shocked. He carefully looked at the token in Wei Wang's hand. It was a gold medal the size of a palm. The words Regal Propria were engraved on it. Beside it, there were a few small words. They should be Jurchen characters. Unfortunately, Song Qing didn't understand them. These Jurchen are really quick to become Chinese. Even Regal Propria is here. Song Qing secretly complained. Actually, he didn't understand. It was just a broken token. How could it be so powerful? If they really wanted to rebel, even if the emperor came, he would be killed. Seeing that even the empress was kneeling in front of him, Wei Wang was proud. Men, take Wanyan Tessie away and give him a good beating. Yes. This time, none of the soldiers dared to refuse. They went forward to take Wanyan Tessie. Wanyan Tessie shook off the guards that surrounded him. Wanyan Tessie, are you trying to rebel? Wei Wang was furious. Song Qing, who was watching from the beam, secretly shook his head. He had already sensed that Wei Wang and Wan Yin Tessie were obviously not on good terms, so he wanted to take this opportunity to mess with him. However, in Song Qing's eyes, Wan Yin Tessie's actions were nothing more than a child throwing tantrum. Other than letting him vent his anger, there was no benefit in doing so. Instead, he had completely provoked a heavyweight enemy like Wan Yin Tessie. If it was a mature politician, he would either not do it or go to the extreme. Since he had the gold medal in his hand, he could take advantage of Wan Yin Tessie's resistance just now and directly charge him with crimes such as rebellion, great disobedience, etc., and behead him on the spot to prevent future troubles. In the end, Prince Wei could only flaunt his prowess here. It was really endless trouble. After dealing with Wan Yin Tessie, Wei Wang turned to Empress Pei Man and said coldly, "Your Highness, the guards outside the palace didn't even know that an assassin had entered your palace. Your Highness, these guards have neglected their duties and should be replaced." After he finished speaking, he turned around. "Men, throw all the guards on duty in Taihe Palace into prison. Change all the palace maids and eunuchs in Taihe Palace. I will personally choose who to replace them." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around. "Guards, throw all the guards on duty in the Hall of Peace and Harmony into the Heavenly Prison. Change all the palace maids and eunuchs in the Hall of Peace and Harmony as well." Empress Peiman's expression changed slightly. This empress is used to having these personal servants by my side. They are very familiar with this empress' hobbies and habits and are very considerate in ordering them around. Your Highness does not need to worry about them. Wei Wang looked deeply at her. After a moment of silence, he suddenly burst into laughter. How could Ben Wang refuse Nyang Nyang's small request? Song Qing secretly thought that this Wei Wang was not too much of an idiot. He used this as a pretext to change the guards of Hall of Tai, he with his own people. And because there was an assassin in her own palace, the Empress could only take a step back. From now on, Hall of Tai, he could be said to be completely under Wei Wang's control. Every move of the Empress could not escape Wei Wang's discerning eyes. I will go and see how that servant Wan Yin Tessie is doing. I will not disturb your Highness's rest. Wei Wang had won a great victory today. At this moment, he felt like he was floating as he walked. As for the two beautiful palace maids that he had taken a fancy to after the disturbance caused by the assassin today, he had lost interest. Anyway, Taihe Palace was under his control now. These two palace maids would be his sooner or later. He wasn't in a hurry. After Wei Wang left, Song Qing continued to hide on the beam for a while. He wanted to see if he could get any useful information from the Empress. However, Empress Pei Man didn't show any emotion, perhaps because she was worried that Wei Wang's people were all around. Seeing that he couldn't hear anything valuable, Song Qing took advantage of the chaos in Taihe Palace and left quietly. After coming out of Taihe Palace, Song Qing hesitated for a moment and decided to go back to his residence in Xiaoxing Kingdom. As he expected, the yellow-robed woman came back here. Song Qing cursed in his heart. Did this woman really treat this place as her home? Fortunately, he wasn't a real eunuch. Otherwise, if the fact that he was harboring an assassin was exposed, would the 9 generations of the eunuch still exist? How did you come out? At this moment, the yellow-robed woman was half leaning on the bed. Her pretty face was pale. When she saw Song Qing come back, she couldn't help but be shocked. "Heroine, aren't you too heartless?" Song Qing wanted to sit on the bed, but was glared at by the yellow-robed woman. He had no choice but to pull a stool over. Fortunately, Taihe Palace was extremely chaotic at that time, so I was able to sneak out. Otherwise, if they found out that I was the one who brought the assassin there, even 10 heads wouldn't be enough to chop off. The yellow-robed woman showed an apologetic expression. "Actually, I was planning to wait for the limelight to pass before coming to save you. I didn't expect you to slip out by yourself." "Huh, I seem to remember that I sealed your acupoint." A suspicious expression immediately appeared on her face. Song Qing answered unhurriedly, "I don't know what happened either." At that time, I suddenly felt numb at the back of my waist. Then, I found that I could move my body. It seems that there was an expert hiding in the palace at that time. The yellow-robed woman had been suspicious before. Now that she heard his words, she was even more convinced. I don't know if he was an enemy or a friend. Song Qing laughed. I heard you say that it was fortunate that that person secretly saved you, that you were able to escape. That proves that person is definitely not an enemy. That's what I thought too. The yellow-robed woman nodded. At first, I was still guessing if he was one of the Emperor's people. But from the way he let you go, it shouldn't be. I say, heroine, you should worry more about yourself. Your face is as white as if you've had your period for a month. If you don't take supplements, I'm afraid you'll die at any time. Song Qing had long noticed that she was seriously injured. She had just fought with the experts under Wei Wang's command. Even an Iron Man couldn't hold on. Shouldn't you be happy that I'm dead? At that time, no one will force you to do this and that. The yellow-robed woman had just said a few words when she couldn't help but cough again. Right, what is period? Period means that there's a wound on the body that won't stop bleeding. Song Qing didn't dare to explain in detail to her. He hurriedly changed the topic. Of course, I don't want to see anything happen to heroine. If heroine dies, no one will unseal the acupuncture points on my body. Won't I die with heroine? You little eunuch have guts. The yellow-robed woman scolded with a smile. Don't worry. When my injury is healed, I will unseal your acupuncture points. In the future, I won't force you to do anything. Everyone is a pitiful person. Song Qing heard this and secretly curled his lips. He thought, you are a national beauty and your martial arts are high. Pretending to be a pitiful person in front of a crippled and weak little eunuch, isn't it pretentious? Drip, drip, drip. Song Qing looked behind her. What's that sound? Chapter 754. It turned out that although the yellow-robed woman had successfully rushed out of the encirclement in the chaos, the palace guards were not weak. Although their lightness skills could not catch up with her, they still had bows and crossbows in their hands. The yellow-robed woman's body technique was excellent, so she successfully avoided most of them, but she still could not avoid all of them. After returning to the residence of Xiaox Xingguo, the yellow-robed woman had planned to use her internal energy to force the arrowhead out. Unfortunately, she was seriously injured, and the genuine chi she could use was limited. Moreover, there were barbs on the arrowhead. Every time she tried to use her internal energy, the wound would hurt so much that she almost fainted. She did not dare to continue. Because the arrowhead was still in her body, it was difficult to stop the bleeding even if the acupoints were sealed. The blood flowed along the wound and dripped onto the bed, making a dripping sound that Song Qing could hear. Hearing the yellow-robed woman's words, Song Qing had a strange expression on his face. I'm afraid that's not very good. Men and women should not touch each other. I'm worried that it will affect your reputation. What do you mean by men and women should not touch each other? You are obviously The yellow-robed woman almost fainted with anger. She had finally summoned the courage to ask him for help, but she did not expect this response. If a man were here, he would definitely not refuse like him. Of course, if it were a man, she would rather die than let him help her. Since you don't mind, I'll help you. Song Qing added, let me tell you in advance that this is your own request. You're not allowed to settle accounts with me in the future. The yellow-robed woman only thought that he was afraid of being silenced. She was angry and amused. Don't worry, I won't settle accounts with you in the future. Turn around and let me have a look. As Song Qing ordered, he took care of water and gauze. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. He had been in this martial arts world for a long time, and he often encountered such situations. Practice makes perfect, and he almost became a surgeon. The yellow-robed woman slowly turned around with her lips tightly closed. It was obvious that she had endured great pain. Song Qing looked at her back and saw that the wound was near the junction of her shoulder blade and ribs. The arrow had been broken by her, leaving only a small part of the arrowhead in her flesh. The clothes near the wound had been soaked with blood and stuck tightly to her body. Without saying a word, Song Qing directly tore the clothes on her back. The yellow-robed woman seemed to be scalded by boiling water. She immediately pulled the quilt next to her and covered her back with it. She got up and looked at him in shock and anger. What are you doing? She was already injured, and such a big movement aggravated the arrow wound on her back. She couldn't help but let out a cry and almost fainted. Song Qingshu said helplessly, "Heroine, if I don't tear off the clothes on your back, how can I take out the arrowhead for you?" The yellow-robed woman's sharp eyes gradually softened, and a trace of red appeared on her pale face. "But is there need to tear so much of your clothes? I just tore it casually. It's obvious that the material of your clothes is not good." Seeing her murderous eyes, Song Qingshu hurriedly said, "Okay, Miss Yang, you don't have to react so much. I'm a eunuch anyway. Sometimes I really wonder if you're a eunuch." The yellow-robed woman looked at him with hatred. "If Miss Yang doesn't believe me, you can check it yourself." Song Qingshu replied with a smile, and at the same time, he intentionally or unintentionally lifted his leg. "Bah, shameless." The yellow-robed woman had already experienced his shamelessness, so she was not as angry as before. "Female hero, you'd better continue to lie on the bed. If you don't take out the arrowhead, you won't have the strength to scold me when the blood drains." Song Qingshu reached out to help her. When his hand touched her shoulder, the yellow-robed woman's body stiffened, and she hurriedly said, "I'll do it myself." After that, she struggled to lie down again and buried her head in the quilt. Her expression could not be seen. Song Qingshu lifted the quilt on her back and clearly felt the yellow-robed woman's whole body tremble again. Looking at the large snow-white skin in front of him, he could not help but say, "Female hero, if I see your body, you won't kill me afterward, right? Shut up, help me take out the arrowhead." The yellow-robed woman was so angry that she almost fainted. If there was no other way, she really wanted to end this damn eunuch's life with a sword. Okay, then you have to bear with it." Song Qingshu finally became serious. He first took the knife to the fire to warm it, and then carefully began to cut the wound on her back. The yellow-robed woman was in so much pain that cold sweat suddenly appeared on her face. She unconsciously grabbed onto Song Qingshu's hand next to her. Song Qingshu was startled at first, but he quickly understood that she was in too much pain, so he let her grab his hand. As he continued to treat the wound, he thought to himself, "Fortunately, I'm not an ordinary person. Otherwise, if you grab my hand, how could I help you take out the arrowhead?" Seeing her struggling to endure the pain, Song Qingshu could not help but feel a trace of pity in his heart. He gently patted the back of her hand to comfort her. Who knew that the yellow-robed woman would subconsciously grab his hand? "Okay, the arrowhead is out." After an unknown amount of time, Song Qingshu finally let out a sigh of relief. In ancient times, Guan Yu scraped the bones to cure poison. Today, I see the female Guan Yu. It really is an eye-opener. "Bah, you're the female Guan Yu." The yellow-robed woman was so angry that she laughed. This little eunuch did not have the slightest bit of knowledge in his chest, but he insisted on being elegant and quoting from the classics. In the end, he ended up being neither fish nor fowl. Of course, the female hero is not Guan Yu. Guan Yu's face is not so white. Song Qingshu laughed. "But female hero, can you let go of my hand? I still have to apply medicine for you." Only then did the yellow-robed woman realize that she had been holding his hand. What made her blush even more was that their fingers were intertwined. She hurriedly shook his hand off. Song Qingshu smiled and did not mind. As he applied medicine for her, he teased, "Come to think of it, this is already the second time I've treated a young lady's injury. Female hero, although your martial arts are high, you still have to be careful. If you get injured a few more times, I might see your entire body." The yellow-robed woman's eyebrows rose. She knew that while his words were not serious, he was still concerned about her. She did not get angry. She only coldly said, "This lady's matters do not need a little eunuch like you to worry about. Hey, what medicine are you applying on me?" She suddenly realized that the other did not use the Jinchuang medicine she had provided. Song Qingshu took the medicine bottle and shook it in front of her. "Of course it's good medicine. With this medicine, you will recover quickly. Also, after the wound heals, it will not leave a scar. Young lady, you are so beautiful. If you leave a scar on your body, I'm afraid your future husband will die of heartache." Wow, what husband, what a mess. Although the yellow-robed woman's words were not polite, it was a woman's nature to love beauty. She hesitated for a moment and let him use her medicine. How can a little eunuch like you have such good medicine? Song Qing-shu unhurriedly replied. Did you forget that I am a big favorite of the Empress? This medicine was given to me by the Imperial Hospital. So that's how it is. The yellow-robed woman couldn't help but nod. Miss, you should stay here and recuperate. I have to go back to the palace. In a bit, I will have the Imperial kitchen prepare something to nourish the blood and bring it to the door. Miss, eat more. Song Qing-shu treated her wounds and stood to leave. Chapter 755. The yellow-robed woman stared straight at Song Qing-shu as if she was talking to herself. During this time, I can see that your position in the palace is not low, and you are also a favorite of the Empress. If I did not appear, you would be living more leisurely in the palace. Not only do I often beat and scold you, I also poke at your weak point to threaten you. You should clearly hate me, so why do you help me again and again? And the yellow-robed woman looked at him and added, and I don't see any resentment in your eyes. You seem to sincerely want to help me. Heroine is so beautiful. Everyone loves beauty. When I see you, I feel close to you from the bottom of my heart, so I can't help but want to help you. Song Qing-shu responded. If other men answered like this, I might believe it, but you are... The yellow-robed woman bit her lip and changed her words. But you are a servant in the palace. There are 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, and 72 concubines. Who knows how many beautiful women there are? You have been influenced and seen many. Why would you help me just because I am beautiful? There are many beauties in the palace, but there really aren't any who are as beautiful as you. Song Qing-shu hastily interrupted her and replied seriously. What do you mean by tragic? Is there anyone who praises someone like you? The yellow-robed woman couldn't help but burst into laughter, revealing her sparkling teeth. For some reason, when faced with the praises and flattery of countless young men over the years, although she had responded with a smile, there wasn't even a ripple in her heart. During this time, she was often teased by this ordinary little eunuch until she trembled. Compared to the Jiangnan scholars who praised her, the words of this little eunuch could be said to be coarse, but she didn't feel any disgust at all. Also, if she thought about it carefully, she found that his words were coarse but not coarse. There was even a feeling of vulgarity but elegance. How could the yellow-robed woman know that this was the common style of speech in the society of Song Qing-shu's previous life? That humor and ease was indeed not something that today's society, where etiquette ran rampant, could compare to. I have not read much, and have misused idioms in front of you. Song Qing-shu did not mind and played the little eunuch's nervousness and embarrassment vividly. I'm not making fun of you, and I think your description is very creative. The yellow-robed woman subconsciously comforted him. But you still haven't told me the truth. Why did you help me? And I can feel from your eyes that you don't seem to be worried about the restriction on your body at all. Song Qing-shu thought to himself that he could not tell her that it was because the Shaolin Temple owed her a favor last time, and because they could barely be counted as part of the same camp. Seeing that the yellow-robed woman was staring at him and waiting for an answer, Song Qing-shu quickly made up a story without changing his expression. To tell you the truth, I am actually a Han. When I was a child, I was caught in the imperial palace to be a eunuch and suffered all kinds of humiliation. Song Qing-shu cried miserably for a while. Then he suddenly noticed that the yellow-robed girl's eyes were a bit red, as if she was distressed. He couldn't help but be shocked, thinking, it can't be, this yellow-robed girl looks quite clever. How could she be fooled like this? He felt that the time was right and changed the topic. That day, when I saw that you came alone to the imperial palace to assassinate me, I admired you very much. In addition, because we are both Han, I actually hoped that you could successfully assassinate me and make us Han people proud. I am sorry, I have disappointed you. The yellow-robed woman's face was sad. Song Qing-shu wanted to seize the opportunity. He tried to find out why she came to the palace of the Jin Kingdom. Seeing that she didn't reveal anything, he didn't dare to continue asking. He didn't want to expose himself. You know that I work in the palace of the Gene Kingdom. If my thoughts are heard by others, even 10 heads won't be enough for me to chop off. So I've been hiding my thoughts in my heart and didn't even dare to tell you. I see. The yellow-robed woman nodded secretly. Finally, the doubts in her heart were solved. After these days of contact, I know that you are a typical person with a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Although you are a little fierce, you will never make things difficult for a small person like me. So I am not afraid of being controlled by you. After explaining, Song Qing-shu let out a long sigh of relief. You don't believe the truth, but you believe the lie. You really can't blame society for being stupid. If you are willing, after I finish here, I will take you out of the imperial palace of the Gene Kingdom and return to our own country. The yellow-robed woman felt that the more she talked to this eunuch, the more congenial she felt. She could not bear to see him continue to suffer here, so she blurted out. Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly and said, "Miss, you also know that I am. What can I do outside the imperial palace with an incomplete body like me? I can't let you raise me for a lifetime. I'd better stay in the imperial palace." At the same time, he could not stop thinking, why did I pretend to be a eunuch? What bad luck. At worst, I can raise you for a lifetime. The yellow-robed woman felt that the words were ambiguous. Until she remembered that the person in front of her was not a man, but only a eunuch, she did not feel so embarrassed. Raise me for a lifetime? Song Qing-shu looked at her with a faint smile. I hope you will remember this in the future. A gentleman cannot go back on his word. Although I am not a gentleman, I am not a villain who breaks his promise. The yellow-robed woman did not know that Song Qing-shu's words had a double meaning, so she promised again without realizing it. Let's talk about these things after you complete your task. Song Qing-shu suddenly thought of her attack in the Hall of Peaceful Harmony today and could not help but ask, does Miss Yang know the two little palace maids in the Empress's palace today? Yes. A trace of deep sadness flashed through the yellow-robed woman's eyes, but she did not intend to continue. Instead, she said, it is not that I deliberately want to hide it, but the less you know about this kind of thing, the safer you will be. After several attempts to probe, he did not get the results he wanted. Song Qing-shu was a little frustrated, but he knew that this kind of thing could not be rushed. He had just opened her heart today, and after a period of familiarity, she would find out sooner or later. After casually chatting with the yellow-robed woman for a while, seeing that she was not in good spirits, Song Qing-shu got up and quietly slipped out of the imperial palace. When he returned to Tang Kuo's mansion, Wan Yin Jebi seemed to deliberately avoid him, so Song Qing-shu was naturally happy to have some peace. After returning to the bedroom, he was thinking about how to save the Song dynasty princesses in the laundry yard when a servant suddenly ran to him with an invitation. Song Qing-shu opened it and found that it was Wan Yin Liang, king of Hailing, who invited him to Xiao House tonight. Xiao House. I'm in Tiger Boho House. Song Qing-shu secretly complained. This name did not surprise him. He asked a servant to ask about it, and sure enough, this Xiao House was the largest brothel in Daxing Mansion and could also be regarded as the largest brothel in the entire Gene Kingdom. And it was different from ordinary brothels. It was said that the boss behind this brothel had an official background and was inextricably linked to the musical house. Brothel, I like it. Song Qing-shu could not help but think of the scene when he met Xia Qingqing in a brothel in Yangzhou City. The corner of his mouth rose slightly. Song Qing-shu was in his room, thinking of a way to save the people of the laundry yard. Before he knew it, night had already fallen. He sat in the carriage that Wan Yin Liang had sent to pick him up. Looking at the luxurious and exquisite decorations of the carriage, he could not help but sigh inwardly. Such an imposing and luxurious carriage. Wouldn't it be the equivalent of a Rolls-Royce in my previous life? He could not help but miss his previous world. He missed the developed internet, missed the huge amount of entertainment activities and the long legs that filled the streets in summer. It was nothing like this world, where all the women wrapped themselves up like rice dumplings. As Song Qing-shu's mind wandered, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. His entire body moved to the side, and a small golden snake had already bitten the seat he had just been sitting on. Seeing that the seat was being corroded by the venom, One could tell how venomous this snake was. Suddenly, the angry roars of the bodyguards could be heard from outside. Immediately after, a petite and exquisite figure rushed into the carriage. In a flash, the dagger in her hand stabbed towards Song Qing-shu. Just as Song Qing-shu was hesitating whether or not to reveal his skills, the dagger suddenly stopped in midair. A surprised female voice rang out from within the carriage. "You're not Wan Yin Liang?" Song Qing-shu looked up and saw that the assassin in front of him was completely wrapped up, revealing only a pair of intelligent eyes. From her petite and graceful figure, as well as her tender voice, he could tell that she was a young girl. Although he could not see her face clearly, based on Song Qing-shu's experience, with such beautiful eyes and eyebrows, as long as there were no major accidents, she would definitely be a beauty, the kind that could cause the downfall of a country and cause the downfall of its people. Realizing that Song Qing-shu was not Wan Yin Liang, the assassin did not hesitate in the slightest. She came quickly and left even faster. In an instant, she retreated back the way she came. Through the window, he could see that she had used several moves to force back the bodyguards who had surrounded her. Her body was as light as a swallow as she disappeared into the eaves of a distant building. The bodyguards that Wan Yin Liang had sent hurried over to apologize, but Song Qing-shu was in no mood to pay attention to them. Instead, he looked thoughtfully in the direction that the assassin had disappeared. It's really been a coincidence recently. I've run into female assassins one after another, and each one of them is a great beauty. Lord son-in-law, how about we wait here for a moment? I've already sent someone to bring another carriage over. At the same time, I've also sent some people to protect Lord son-in-law, the bodyguard hurriedly said. There's no need. It's getting late. Let's go to Autumn Fragrance Brothel first. Song Qing-shu returned to the carriage. The poisonous snakes in the carriage had already been cleaned up by the bodyguards. But the assassin, the bodyguard hesitated. Song Qing-shu smiled. The assassin's target was your master, the High Ling King. I was just caught in the crossfire. Don't worry, there won't be any more assassins. When Song Qing-shu arrived at Autumn Fragrance Brothel, Wan Yin Liang had already come out to greet him from afar. Brother Tang, this king has already heard about what happened on the way here. It's all thanks to Brother Tang, Qua's quick reaction. If it were me, I'm afraid I would have died on the spot. Speaking of which, Brother Tang, Qua really did save this king's life. Your Highness is too polite. This time, I only managed to escape with my life because of a lucky coincidence. Song Qing-shu had originally suspected that Wan Yin Liang had deliberately put on a show. However, from the look of fear on his face, it seemed that the assassin hadn't been sent by Wan Yin Liang. This king is truly sorry for causing Brother Tang Qua to suffer such a fright. It just so happens that a top-grade courtesan has come to Autumn Fragrance Brothel today. This king will buy her and give her to Brother Tang Qua as an apology. Wan Yin Liang pulled Song Qing-shu's hand intimately and walked inside. Chapter 756. Top Courtesan. Song Qing-shu had a strange look on his face. It seemed that he and courtesan were really fated to be together. As soon as they entered the Qiuxiang house, Song Qing-shu smelled a refreshing fragrance of cosmetics. It was as if he was in the middle of a cosmetics counter in a shopping mall in his previous life. Along the way, Song Qing-shu was amazed by the magnificence of the brothel. No wonder it was called the #1 brothel in the Jin Kingdom. Its layout and style were even better than those famous entertainment clubs in his previous life. I wonder how He Iron Fist, brothel is doing. Song Qing-shu looked worried. It was okay in the Qin Kingdom. With his preferential policies and secret support, there was not much problem. However, in other countries, the prospect of competing with a brothel of this level was not optimistic. This Autumn Fragrance Brothel was a little different from ordinary brothels. In the middle was a wide platform, and a large number of seats were scattered in a fan shape around the platform. There were also a few floors upstairs. Song Qing-shu casually swept a few glances and saw that these rooms upstairs were all private rooms. They should be provided to guests with prominent identities or wealthy families. The layout of the entire brothel was a little like a miniature version of the Roman Colosseum. Wang Yinliang led him upstairs and finally entered a private room on the top floor. Song Qingshu nodded to himself. With Wang Yinliang's influence in the Jin Kingdom, of course he would choose the best seats. There was someone else in the private room. Song Qingshu's eyes were sharp, and he saw a one-armed man with an unkempt beard sitting alone in a corner, drinking. Who else could it be but Yang Hua? He seemed to be indifferent to everything. Even when Wang Yinliang and Song Qingshu walked in, he did not even bat an eye. F***CK. Seeing Yang Hua will ruin your whole life. This saying is not for nothing. He is so handsome even when he is depressed. That unshaven beard and that melancholy look in his eyes. If he were in my previous world, I don't know how many love-struck girls would rush to sleep with him. Even though Song Qingshu's appearance had once been a famous handsome man in the martial arts world, he had to admit that purely in terms of appearance, he really couldn't compare to Yang Hua. However, he had long since passed the age of competing in appearance, so he didn't have any negative emotions because of this. Brother Tanqua, please forgive me. Brother Bingda has just learned about his identity and can't accept it. If he has done anything wrong, I apologize on his behalf. Before Wang Yinliang could finish, Yang was suddenly raised his head. His sleepy eyes suddenly became sharp. My name is Yang Hua. Yang Hua was like that in the past, and will always be like that. Wang Yinliang smiled bitterly. Brother Bingda, I know it's hard for you to accept it, but it's the truth. Song Qingshu could understand Yang Hua's current mood very well, so he took this chance to interrupt him. Your Highness, in any case, a name is just a title. Since Brother Yang can't accept it right now, let's just call him Yang Hua in private. Yang Hua, Song Qingshu said and walked to Yang Hua with a smile. It's been a while since we last met. We just met at the city gate a few days ago. Yang Hua's voice was cold, but when he heard Song Qingshu call him Yang Hua instead of Wang Yinbingda, his expression softened a little. It seems that Brother Tanqua and Brother Yang are fated to meet. Brother Tanqua, you may not know this, but Brother Yang didn't want to come today, but he changed his mind when I said you were coming. Wang Yinliang said with a smile. Oh, Song Qingshu looked at Yang Hua in amazement, thinking that he and Yang Hua had never interacted before, so why would he look at him differently? Unfortunately, Yang Hua was still drinking in silence and had no intention of explaining. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and turned around, only to find that there was another person on the other side of the room. This person's face was like jade. Although he wasn't as handsome as Yang Hua, he was still a handsome man. His beard added a mature charm to his appearance. Let me introduce you. Brother Tanqua. This is the newly promoted Assistant Minister of War, Lord Xiaoyu. Lord Xiao, this is the Imperial Prince Consort, left Minister Tang Quobian. Wang Yinliang took the two's hands and introduced them. I've long heard of the Imperial Prince Consort's name. Now that I've seen you today, you are indeed extraordinary. Xiaoyu smiled and bowed. Lord Zhao's surname is Xiao. Song Qingshu looked at him thoughtfully. It should be known that the surname Xiao was rarely seen among enlightened beings. Imperial Prince Consort is indeed wise. To tell you the truth, I am actually from the Liao dynasty. I can barely be considered part of the Empress's family. Xiaoyu said without a trace of displeasure. Liao dynasty? Or the Empress's family? Song Qingshu was secretly shocked. The power of the Liao dynasty was firmly in the hands of the Yelu clan of the imperial family and the Xiao clan of the Empress. This person's surname was Xiao, and he was from the Empress's family. Why was he an official of the Jin Kingdom? The hatred between the Jin Kingdom and the Liao dynasty was as deep as the sea. As if he had guessed his doubts, Wang Yinliang explained. When the Jin Kingdom conquered the Liao dynasty, they captured many members of the Liao imperial family and Empress's family. Some of them were willing to pledge their loyalty to the Jin Kingdom. The Jin Kingdom was tolerant and appointed many of them to official positions. So it's the Liao dynasty. Song Qingshu secretly felt ashamed. Although Wang Yinliang did not say what happened to those who were unwilling to pledge their loyalty, it was not difficult to guess their tragic fate. He wondered if Xiao Feng and Yelu Nancian would kill them when they saw this Lord Xiao. After chatting for a while, they sat down. Wan Yin Liang naturally sat at the head of the table. Song Qing-shu sat beside him, which was enough to show how much Wan Yin Liang valued him. Xiao Yu's seat was at the back, as if he was Wan Yin Liang's attendant. As for Yang Guo, he was not interested in sitting with him at all. He hid in a corner and drank his wine. No one knew what he was thinking. After sitting down, Song Qing-shu looked around and did not see Ouyang Feng and the others. He could not help but ask, "Why don't I see Mr. Ouyang and the others?" Wan Yin Liang laughed and winked ambiguously. "Thank you for your concern, Brother Tranquil, but today's occasion is not suitable to bring them along." Song Qing-shu was slightly startled, but he quickly realized that Wan Yin Liang was here to bid for the title of courtesan belle. There was only one courtesan belle, but there were 3 experts. When the time came, it would be a problem to decide who would get the title. Perhaps Ouyang Feng and the others did not value women that much, but the title of courtesan belle was a symbol of honor. Whoever Wan Yin Liang gave her to would have a higher status. When the time came, even if the 3 experts did not like women, they would have to fight for her. This was probably what Wan Yin Liang was worried about, so he decided not to bring any of them. "Someone tried to assassinate Your Highness today. Your Highness, don't you think this is a little too dangerous?" Song Qing-shu could not help but ask. Wan Yin Liang laughed and pointed at the 4 burly men hiding in the corner. With a proud expression, he said, "Brother Tranquil, please take a look. These 2 are the top experts of the Tu Dan family, Tu Dan Ali Chuhu and Tu Dan Jun. These 2 are the chitin experts recommended by Assistant Minister Xiao, Yelu Yuani, and Xiao Tonggu Dai. The 4 of them are the experts among the experts. Individually, they may be slightly weaker than Mr. Ouyang, but when the 4 of them join forces, whether it is Mr. Ouyang or Mr. Morong, they will die without a doubt. How can there be so many experts in this world?" Yang Guo, who had been silent all this time, suddenly laughed coldly, his words and expression filled with disdain. Chapter 757. "Don't." Wan Yin Goodbye grabbed her and said in an almost pleading tone, "Jiejie, you can't let him bully you like this." Wan Yin Ping said angrily. Wan Yin Goodbye shook her head. He almost lost his life this time and is seriously injured. After experiencing life and death, it's normal for him to have a bad temper. "I really have to give it to you." Wan Yin Ping stomped her feet angrily. "You'll spoil a man's temper like this. They'll only bully you even more in the future." Wan Yin Goodbye couldn't help but laugh through her tears. "Ping, you're clearly just a virgin girl, but you speak as if you know men very well. Don't worry, I know your brother-in-law. He's not the kind of person you say he is. When you meet a man who truly loves you, you'll understand what I'm doing. For the person I love, what's a little grievance?" Hearing her sister mention a man she loved, Tang Quobian's face appeared in Wan Yin Ping's mind. She jumped in fright and said guiltily, I don't like those stinky men. I want to be with Jiejie forever." Wan Yin Goodbye couldn't help but smile. She reached out and poked her sister's forehead. You have a childish temper." Wan Yin Ping didn't let this go. She reached out and tickled her sister. Laughter like silver bells rang out in the waterside pavilion. After the 2 sisters played around for a while, they took a walk in the garden. "Ping, go talk to your brother-in-law. He's not in a good mood. Go walk around and help him recover from his depression," Wan Yin Goodbye said with a smile. Wan Yin Ping's heart jumped. She thought her sister had discovered something. She looked at her guiltily. Why don't you go yourself? Why do you have to find me?" Wan Yin Goodbye's lips curled up, revealing a mischievous smile. Didn't you say it? Even though I don't blame him, I have to put on a show. Otherwise, he'll be too proud. But I can't let him be depressed like this. You're my good sister. If I don't find you, who else would I find? Then, okay, but I'll say the ugly words first. I won't be as gentle as you are to brother-in-law." Wan Yin Ping stretched out her hand and cracked the whip, deliberately putting on a fierce expression. All right. You should go see your brother-in-law now. I'm still a little worried about him." Wan Yin Goodbye smiled as he pushed his sister towards Song Qingshu's residence. "I'm so scared of you. I'll go, okay?" Wan Yin Ping mumbled and left with an unwilling expression. Looking at his sister's back as she left, Wan Yin Gobai smiled. This sister of his had a sharp tongue, but a soft heart. Although she usually had a fierce and overbearing appearance, her heart was probably even weaker than his, her sister's. After Song Qingshu purposely drove Wan Yin Gobai away, his thoughts were a mess. After a long time, he reconsidered the problem of how to save Song Yuanxiao and the others. Although the laundry yard was heavily guarded, that wasn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem was that Song Yuanxiao and the others had been poisoned by Rouge Drunk and had lost all of their martial arts. Even if he could save the three of them from the laundry yard, he wouldn't be able to take them out of the palace. Therefore, the most important thing was to find the antidote for Rouge Drunk. But Song Qingshu hadn't even seen the poison of Rouge Drunk before, so where would he find the antidote? After thinking about it, the only way to break through was Wan Yinping. From last night's situation, Wan Yinping's position in the laundry yard was not low. It was very possible that there was an antidote for Rouge Drunk. Just as they say, speak of the devil and he will appear, Song Qingshu was thinking about how to break through from Wan Yinping. There was a knock on the door. Lifting his head, he saw Wan Yinping standing at the door. "Brother-in-law, can I come in?" Song Qingshu wanted to get the antidote from her, so how could he refuse to interact with her? Overjoyed, he said, "Come in, come in." Wan Yinping's cheeks blushed imperceptibly. "Humph, look at how happy you are. You're not as depressed as my sister said." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. "You saw your sister?" "Yes." Wan Yinping walked over and pulled a stool over to sit by the bed. "You made her so angry that she cried." Song Qingshu sighed. "I don't know what happened. I just suddenly lost control." Tang Quobian and Wan Yin Gobai were very loving before, and they had probably only quarreled a few times. Now that he was purposely distancing himself from her, he had to find a reason. Wan Yinping showed an expression of, "I knew it," obviously accepting this explanation. "Looks like brother-in-law must have encountered many interesting things on this trip to Kaifeng. Hurry up and tell me about them." Looking at her gossipy expression, Song Qingshu was momentarily speechless. Hey, your behavior is too disappointing. I almost died in Kaifeng." "Well, I'm not dead yet." Wan Yinping showed a disapproving expression, but seeing Song Qingshu's angry expression, she giggled. Fine, I was just angry that you bullied my sister, so I purposely made you angry." Looking at the young girl in front of him with her bright eyes, Song Qingshu found it hard to really get angry. "Fine, what do you want to know? Pick the most shocking ones. For example, how did you get captured by that Song Dynasty woman called Huangrong? What did you face at that time?" Wan Yinping looked at him with anticipation, as if she was a child waiting for her parent to tell her story. Song Qingshu had already expected these questions and had prepared them flawlessly. He spoke tirelessly, purposefully exaggerating some of the details, causing Wan Yinping to occasionally exclaim in shock. "Luckily, that woman called Huang Rong kept her word and let you go in the end. Otherwise, I would." Wan Yinping patted her chest, full of hatred. She didn't know why, but she suddenly stopped talking. Song Qingshu paused and asked reflexively, "You would what?" Wan Yinping puffed out her chest. "I would personally lead the army south, attack Xiangyang, capture that woman, and throw her into the laundry yard to avenge you." Noticing Song Qingshu's shocked expression, her face reddened slightly, and she quickly added, "Don't think too much. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for my sister." Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Don't worry. I'm not delusional enough to think that our family's proud little princess will fly into a rage for the sake of her husband." "What's a rage?" Wan Yinping paused. Fortune Yuan, Wu Sangue flew into a rage for her. "I'm not a woman, so of course I'm a rage," Song Qingshu explained. Wan Yinping suddenly stood up, her face instantly turning red. "What nonsense are you talking about? With your looks, not to mention Panin and Song Yu, there are many nobles who are more handsome than you. You're not a rage." Song Qingshu's expression darkened. "So in Ping Er's eyes, brother-in-law is more handsome than you. So in Ping Er's eyes, brother-in-law is so unbearable." Wan Yinping instantly panicked and stammered, Actually, you're not that bad. Even though you're a bit ugly, you can barely be considered handsome. Last night, Song Qingshu had seen her resolute and decisive actions in the palace. Who knew that today he would see her side of a little girl? This change was too big, and it shocked him. But in addition to the shock, he slowly realized something. After all, he could be considered experienced in relationships now. From Wang Yinping's words and actions, he acutely sensed that she seemed to have a strange feeling for Tang Quobian. But because of morals and ethics, or perhaps because of the young girl's ignorance, she didn't know her own heart. Could this Tang Quobian really be the reincarnation of Pan? And he is such a perfect wife like Wang Yin Gobai, and he's unknowingly moved his sister-in-law's heart. Song Qingshu clicked his tongue. In order to save Song Yuan Xiao and the others, he had to guide Wang Yinping's feelings. Am I doing this a bit too shameless? At the last moment, Song Qingshu hesitated. Maybe I'm not completely bad enough. Hey, I've already apologized. Brother-in-law, you shouldn't be this weak, right? Seeing that Song Qingshu's expression was dark and he didn't say anything, Wang Yinping was dumbfounded. No, I was just suddenly thinking about the laundry brothel you mentioned. Song Qingshu came back to his senses and casually changed the topic to the laundry brothel. That place is the most suitable for controlling those arrogant women of the song, Wang Yinping said in an unclear tone. She didn't seem to have any intention of continuing on this topic. Instead, she returned to the other details of his trip to Kaifeng. Song Qingshu's heart suddenly froze. He looked at her with confusion. Why are you asking in such detail? It's like you're interrogating me. Wang Yinping had an awkward expression. I knew I couldn't fool brother-in-law. In fact, Brother Emperor understands that you are injured, so he didn't need to report to the Shangshu department. However, we still need to find out more about the matter of Kaifeng. We can't just listen to the hailing king's words, so I volunteer to take this task. So it's like that. Song Qingshu let out a sigh of relief. As long as she wasn't purposely targeting him, it was fine. Then, he began to chat with her as if they were just chatting. However, in order to increase the chances of interacting with Wang Yinping, Song Qingshu would always deliberately leave some details out of his answers. He did this so that she would ask him a few more times in the future. Although Wang Yinping was faintly aware of this, she still pretended that she didn't know anything. She only thought that he wanted to get closer to her. Her heart jumped with excitement, but this thought was quickly suppressed by her rationality. She quickly used her older sister to tell her brother-in-law to convince herself. In the next few days, because of Song Qingshu's deliberate actions, he became more and more distant from Wang Yingobai, his official wife. He didn't speak much every day. On the other hand, he chatted happily with his sister-in-law, Wang Yingobai. Whenever he had time, he would chat very happily. Regarding this, Wang Yingobai was both happy and sad. Early in the morning, Wang Yinping happily ran over to find Song Qingshu. Her trousers were all tucked into her small boots, outlining her long and slender legs. She wore a small leather armor on her chest that matched with the belt on her waist, making her look even more slender. A young and energetic girl stood in front of him. Brother-in-law, don't learn from those Han people. Staying in the house all day will heal too slowly. Us Nuzarin should recover on horseback. Let's go. I'll take you to the suburbs to hunt. Into this chapter. Chapter 758. Hunting. Song Qingshu was startled for a moment, then immediately reacted. Unlike the Han people, who liked to recite poems, Nuzarin preferred outdoor activities such as hunting. Song Qingshu had long planned to get close to Wang Yinping and investigate the matter of the rouge intoxication antidote. This was a good opportunity, but he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Although his martial arts were not bad, he had no confidence in riding and archery. If Wang Yinping saw through him, it would not be worth it. Don't think about it. Let's go. Seeing Song Qingshu not speaking, Wang Yinping thought he was hesitating, so she couldn't help but grab his arm and pull him out. Hey, you have to let me change first. Song Qingshu hurriedly shouted. In order to reduce contact with the people in Tangqua's mansion, he had been pretending to be sick. Now he was only lying on the bed in his underwear. Just now, he had already thought it through. This was a rare opportunity. If he missed it, he did not know when he would be able to spend time with the two of them again. As for the matter of shooting arrows, he would deal with it when the time came. There would always be a way to deal with it. Hurry up and change. Wang Yinping discovered he was not wearing clothes. As if she was burned, she immediately let go of his hand. Can you turn around? Although Song Qing-shu didn't mind, she was still his sister-in-law. There was a difference between a man and a woman, so he still had to be polite. Hey, who wants to look at you? Wang Yinping's face turned red, and after saying this, she ran out. I will wait for you at my sister's place. When you are ready, come find me. Young girls are always so fickle. Song Qing-shu faintly smiled. When he got up and was about to change his clothes, he suddenly thought of something important. When going out to hunt, he must wear special clothes, but he didn't know where Tranquil put his hunting clothes. Song Qing-shu searched the room but couldn't find it. Just as he was feeling distressed, footsteps came from the corridor again. He looked up and couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Why did you come back?" When my sister heard that I was going to take you hunting, she remembered that she had taken your hunting clothes to be mended. She was worried that you wouldn't be able to find them, so she asked me to bring them to you. Wang Yinping pushed the set of clothes in her arms forward after she finished speaking. Song Qing-shu really wanted to rush up and give her a hug and a kiss. It was really timely. Why are you looking at me like that? Wang Yinping subconsciously took a step back. Here, I've given you the clothes. I'll wait for you at my sister's place. Hey, wait. Song Qing-shu stopped her and asked after a moment of hesitation, why didn't your sister bring the clothes herself? Humph, my sister hasn't forgiven you yet, Wang Yinping said discontentedly. By the way, it's been so long. Why haven't you apologized to her? Song Qing-shu smiled bitterly and said, can we not talk about this today? Never mind. I'm going to go to my sister's place. Wang Yinping impatiently waved her hand. As she walked, she muttered, I really don't know what happened to you two. You used to be so attached to each other, but now you need me to do everything you want to say. Song Qing-shu secretly sighed. In order to not expose his identity, he could only temporarily wrong Wang Yin goodbye. Just as he was about to put on the clothes that were delivered, he was suddenly dumbfounded. This set of clothes seemed to be Jurchen ethnic clothing. It looked quite complicated. If he didn't wear it before, it would be terrible if he wore it incorrectly. Seeing Wang Yinping's departing figure, Song Qing-shu suddenly had an idea and hurriedly called out to her. Ping er. Wang Yinping's body paused, and she turned her head to look at him with a face of confusion. Song Qing-shu pointed at the clothes in his hand. Come help me put them on. Wang Yinping's heart inexplicably trembled, and she said with some panic, don't you know how to wear them yourself? Why do you want me to help you wear them? Song Qing-shu's face didn't turn red and his heart didn't jump as he said, I want to try what it feels like to be served by my family's proud princess. Who's your family's? Wang Yinping bit her lip. She originally wanted to refuse, but seeing the earnest look in Song Qing-shu's eyes, she didn't know why, but she unconsciously agreed. I'm not as good at serving people as my sister. Don't blame me if I don't dress well. If you haven't tried, how do you know you're worse than your sister? Song Qing-shu said with a double meaning in his words. Wang Yinping's heart jumped, and she unconsciously looked at him. Seeing that his expression was normal, she thought that she was thinking wrongly. She faintly sighed. Sister is beautiful and gentle. How can a wild girl like me compare to her? Song Qing-shu said with a smile. How can that be? From what I see, you two sisters each have your own specialties. One is gentle and moving while the other is cute and playful. There's no difference in who is better. It's just that each has their own advantages. Wang Yinping raised her head and looked at him with a faint smile on her face. Brother-in-law, your mouth is so sweet today. You're not planning to seduce me, are you? Song Qing-shu cursed inwardly. He really was too hasty. Though this young girl liked her brother-in-law, she wasn't an idiot. Tang Quobian's sudden change in attitude would inevitably make her suspicious. But he was a veteran, and his eyes didn't move away at all. Instead, he looked back at her and calmly replied, Then will you be seduced by me? No matter how strong Wang Yinping was, she was still an inexperienced young girl. She really couldn't withstand Song Qing-shu's perverted methods. Her eyes darted away in panic. You wish. And she seemed to realize that her tone was too soft. She lifted her boot and kicked Song Qingshu's leg. Ouch! Who knew that the one who cried out in pain wasn't Song Qingshu, but herself? Wang Yinping fell to the ground and held the tip of her foot. Her face was full of anger. Brother-in-law, did you tie a piece of metal in your pants? It hurts. When Wang Yinping suddenly attacked, Song Qingshu's Jinshi protection automatically counterattacked. Luckily, he reacted in time and retracted most of his strength. Otherwise, Wang Yinping's foot would have been broken. Who told your brother-in-law to be so thick-skinned? Song Qingshu said as he squatted down to examine her foot. Is it here? A bit in front. Wang Yinping sucked in a cold breath and pointed forward. Song Qingshu placed her foot on his thigh and pressed a few acupuncture points near her foot without leaving a trace. He said, Don't worry, brother-in-law will rub it for you and it will be fine soon. Wang Yinping nodded. She only realized when she felt a numb and sore sensation on her foot. Their current position was a bit inappropriate. What brother-in-law rubbed his sister-in-law's feet? Wang Yinping unconsciously wanted to pull her foot back, but noticed that her brother-in-law's eyes were clear and focused on examining her injury. She thought that if she did that, she would be too obvious. Wouldn't that be even more awkward? Wang Yingebai had given the clothes to her sister and knew that she was careless. She was a bit worried and came over to take a look. Who knew that when she came over, she would see the scene in front of her. Her husband was rubbing her sister's foot, and her sister was standing to the side with a bashful expression. She didn't seem to have any intention of refusing. Song Qingshu had noticed her arrival, but he didn't have any intention of stopping. Instead, he discreetly moved his body to block Wang Yinping's view so that she wouldn't see her sister standing by the window. From Wang Yinggebai's point of view, it looked like her sister was in her husband's arms, and the two of them were lovey-dovey. She really wanted to push open the door and question the two of them, but wouldn't that be embarrassing for the two of them? It was one thing for Tranquil to defend himself, but she knew her sister's personality very well. She would do something stupid out of shame and anger. She had loved her sister since she was young and wouldn't want her to be hurt. She didn't have the courage to continue watching. Wang Yinggebai could only turn and leave in a daze. Two streams of tears silently flowed down her beautiful cheeks. Feeling her leave, Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. It was easy to be a villain, but difficult to be a gentleman. All right, brother-in-law, it doesn't hurt anymore. Wang Yinping didn't know that her sister had just come and had a huge misunderstanding. Seeing that Song Qingshu had suddenly stopped and held her foot without moving, she couldn't stand it and quickly reminded him in a small voice. Song Qingshu finally reacted. Seeing that she was about to pull her foot back, he didn't force it and smiled awkwardly. It's good that you're all right, haha. Wang Yinping stood up with a red face and moved her foot. She instantly revealed a look of surprise. Brother-in-law, you're amazing. It really doesn't hurt at all. Where did you learn this technique? It's just a small trick, not worth mentioning. Song Qingshu smiled slightly, but his expression became a bit strange. What kind of skill is it to make you feel no pain? Brother-in-law is the one who is amazing if he can make you feel so much pain that you can't get out of bed. Forget it if you don't want to say it, petty. Wang Yinping didn't know how dirty Song Qingshu's mind was right now. She just thought that he was keeping it to himself and didn't want to tell her this technique. However, she was just asking casually and wasn't really interested. I'll go tell sister, and then we'll go. Wang Yinping snapped her fingers and prepared to go to her sister's place with a face full of joy. Song Qingshu pulled her back. There's no need to go, let's go now. What a joke. If the two sisters met now, no matter how magnanimous Wang Yinggebai was, it would be hard for him to face her. At that time, wouldn't it be like Mars colliding with Earth? It would be hard to hide what he did. Why? Wang Yinping pulled her hand back without a trace. Song Qingshu suddenly thought of an excellent excuse. You know your sister. She's good at everything, but she's too wishy-washy. When we get to her place later, she'll definitely tell us to be careful here and there. It's getting late now. If we're delayed by her for a while, how are we supposed to go hunting? Wang Yinping pursed her lips and smiled. That's really the case. All right then, let's go directly. I haven't put on my clothes yet. Song Qingshu pointed at his clothes that were halfway on and smiled bitterly. Wang Yinping stuck out her tongue. Who asked you to bully me just now? Although she said that, she still ran over to help him put on his clothes. Song Qingshu raised his hands and let Wang Yinping fly around him like a butterfly. His nose was filled with her fragrance. Finally, when Wang Yinping stood in front of him and carefully helped him put on his clothes with her head lowered, Song Qingshu could see her slender and delicate neck from his angle. That snow-white and delicate skin made him dizzy, and his throat felt a little dry. Chapter 759. Wang Yinping suddenly raised her head and noticed Song Qingshu's gaze. A red flush rose on her neck, and she unconsciously pushed him. She huffed unhappily. "Where the rest yourself? I'll wait for you at the door." She hurriedly said this and ran out without looking back. Song Qingshu secretly despised himself and hurriedly finished wearing the rest of the clothes. This was all thanks to Wang Yinping, who had already helped him wear most of the clothes. When he reached the door, Wang Yinping was riding on a little red horse. From the expression on her face, it was clear that she was impatient from waiting. Seeing Song Qingshu come out, Wang Yinping's eyes lit up and she couldn't help but say, "Brother-in-law, even though you're a bit ugly, but with this set of clothes, you look a bit heroic." Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Of course. Why don't you see who put on these clothes for me?" Wang Yinping's face reddened, and she muttered in a small voice, "Sister clearly prepared these clothes for you. What does it have to do with me?" Finishing, she squeezed the horse's belly and rode away, leaving behind a string of bell-like laughter. "Brother-in-law, come chase me. Let's compete in horsemanship first." "Come chase you?" Song Qingshu's expression was very strange because Wang Yinping's words made him think of the famous joke of the dirty demon king in his previous life. "Chase me. If you catch me, I'll let you." But after seeing Wang Yinping's skilled horsemanship and how she disappeared at the end of the street in the blink of an eye, Song Qingshu didn't have the confidence to catch up to her. After all, he had transmigrated from the future. In his previous world, he hadn't even ridden a horse before. Even though he had ridden many horses after coming to this world, his horsemanship was just passable. Compared to the nomadic tribes who grew up on horseback, he was a far cry. Moreover, Wang Yinping was one of the best. While Song Qingshu was in a daze, a servant had already brought a horse over. Song Qingshu's heroic spirit rose. "No matter what, I'm still a person who has killed in and out of 100,000 soldiers on the battlefield. Do you think I'm afraid of a little girl like you?" Perhaps it was his heroic spirit that allowed him to perform exceptionally well. He leapt onto the horse in one breath and hurriedly chased after Wang Yinping. Luckily, they were in the city and the roads were not so smooth. It was difficult for Wang Yinping to fully display her riding skills, and Song Qingshu was able to gradually shorten the distance between them. Looking ahead at the back of the horse, Song Qingshu couldn't stop praising the back view that was in high spirits. Wang Yinping really displayed the youthful vigor of a young girl to the fullest. Compared to her, many of the young girls in this world who were imprisoned in their boudoirs were really inferior. Who has eaten the guts of a leopard to actually dare to gallop on the street? When they were about to reach the city gates, the soldiers guarding the gates angrily shouted when they saw the two of them rushing over. It had to be known that the capital was an important place and the roads were filled with pedestrians. Galloping on horses like this was forbidden. "Are your dog eyes blind?" The reply he got was a whip that caused the soldier to stumble. Wang Yinping's face was as cold as ice as she charged out of the city without slowing down. Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue as he watched from behind. She was clearly smiling like a flower, and then her face turned cold in an instant. Wasn't this change a bit too big? Song Qingshu had always disapproved of her noble actions. But when he thought about how she was the emperor's most beloved little sister and how she had been a noble since she was young, it was normal for her to be like this. Song Qingshu wouldn't pedantically educate her about human rights. But right now, he was more interested in Wang Yinping's personality. No matter if it was the scene that night in the laundry yard or her current behavior, She was clearly a cruel and merciless queen. But in front of him, she was a bashful little girl. He didn't know which face was the real her. Wang Yinping and Song Qingshu ran out of the city gates one after the other. The soldier who had been whipped to the ground by Wang Yinping finally got up. He touched the blood on his face and was instantly enraged. Just as he was about to sound the gong to warn the others, one of his companions hurriedly pulled him to the side. "Don't. This bitch actually dared to charge through the city gates. No matter where she goes, it's a crime punishable by death. Why are you pulling me?" The soldier was filled with hatred. "Forget it. You're new here. No wonder you don't know that demoness. The bitch you're talking about is the emperor's most beloved little sister, the Qi Kingdom's princess. Not to mention you. Even those noble young masters who run amok in the capital would be whipped if they were the slightest bit unhappy. Those high and mighty young masters wouldn't even dare to fart. Could it be that you're stronger than those people?" His companion lowered his voice and quickly explained. "Oomph." The soldier snorted coldly, but he knew that his companion was telling the truth. He could only swallow his anger and ask, "Who's that man chasing after her? Could it be that you want to vent your anger on that man?" His companion looked at him sympathetically. "I advise you to give up on that idea as soon as possible. That man is the brother-in-law of the Qi Kingdom's princess, the emperor's son-in-law. He holds the position of left minister and is also the clan leader of the Tranquil family. Aren't you courting death by venting your anger on him?" "That Tranquil family?" The soldier was stunned. "Nonsense. How many Tranquil families are there?" His companion replied, "In the Jin Kingdom, other than the two branches of the ancestors and the royal family, the three most powerful families are the Tranquil, Pucha, and Tudan families. They have intermarried with the royal family for generations and have produced countless high-ranking officials. How can a small soldier like us afford to offend them? Damn it, today is really an unlucky day." The soldier spat angrily as he stared in the direction where the two had left. His eyes were filled with resentment. Brother-in-law is chasing after his sister-in-law. I wonder what kind of immoral things he's going to do. He, the sister-in-law, is the brother-in-law's sweet little cotton-padded jacket. His companion laughed wretchedly. "I don't need to tell you how licentious the lives of these nobles are in private. In my opinion, the two of them are probably tired of the bad influence in the city and are preparing to find a secluded place in the wilderness to have 300 rounds of sex." Puffed. The man behind them looks so sickly. "If he can have 300 rounds, I'll write my name upside down." The soldier spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn it, his wife is a princess, and his sister-in-law is also a princess. If it were me, I'd definitely F***CK them until they can't get out of bed. His companion couldn't help but scold him with a smile. "You brat, dream on. Hee hee, but you don't say, although the Qi Kingdom's princess is a little fierce, her round, long legs and perky little, but make me want to F***CK her just by looking at her." Wang Yinping was naturally unaware that she had become the object of the two soldiers' fantasies. However, even if she knew, she wouldn't care about such ant-like people. Of course, she would still issue an order to make the two regret being born into this world. After exiting the city gates, her exquisite horsemanship was finally put to use perfectly. Soon, she had left Song Qingshu far behind. After riding for an unknown period of time, she suddenly pulled on the reins and looked at the empty space behind her. She couldn't help but pout. Brother-in-law is such an idiot. End of this chapter. Chapter 760. After waiting for a while, she still didn't see any traces of her brother-in-law. Wang Yinping couldn't sit still and turned the horse back the way she came. As she urged the horse, she looked around anxiously and prayed in her heart, "Brother-in-law, please don't let anything happen to you." After searching for a long time, Wang Yinping finally found Song Qingshu. However, when she saw Song Qingshu's appearance, she was so angry that smoke almost came out of her 7 orifices. "Brother-in-law, I spent so much effort looking for you, and you're just sitting here leisurely sunbathing?" Right now, Song Qingshu was lying on a large rock with a strand of green foxtail grass in his mouth. His hands were behind his head, and his legs were crossed. The tips of his feet were still swaying casually. Hearing her voice, he opened his eyes and laughed. "Ping-er, you've finally come. Come my ass." Wan Yin Ping wanted to whip out her waist and hit his face with her whip. It took her a lot of effort to control this tempting urge. "What do you mean by this?" Not only did Song Qingshu not show any guilt, he cried out that he was wronged. "Ping-er, you have to be honest when you speak. Brother-in-law is a sick person right now, and you want me to race horses with you?" Wan Yin Ping's face turned slightly red, and a large part of her anger disappeared. She couldn't help but mutter, "Your body isn't well. You could have told me first." Song Qingshu couldn't help but roll his eyes. "I wanted to tell you first, but just as I was about to open my mouth, you had already galloped so far away. What do you want me to say?" Okay, I didn't think it through this time, but I've come back to find you." Wan Yin Ping's breathing suddenly stopped, and she looked suspiciously at him. "You don't look worried at all. You seem to be sure that I'll come back to find you." Song Qing smiled. "Of course, you are brother-in-law's considerate little cotton-padded jacket. Brother-in-law didn't spoil you in vain." Since finding the antidote for rouge intoxication had to start with Wan Yin Ping, he had to prepare well. During this time, he found out from the servants in the mansion that when Tang Kuo-bian and Wan Yin Ge got married, Wan Yin Ping was still a little girl. Tang Kuo-bian loved his wife and his sister very much. Similarly, Wan Yin Ping was also very close to him. However, as she grew older, the little girl had grown into a beautiful young girl and could no longer be as close to her brother-in-law as she had been when she was young. This Tang Kuo-bian must be a serious lolicon. The lowly grooming plan is something that many men yearn for, but a big bearded man made it happen. Song Qingshu was screaming in his heart. He shuddered at the thought of Tang Kuo-bian's burly appearance. What little cotton-padded jacket, spoiled or not? Wan Yin Ping's expression became bashful. "I'm just afraid that Jiejie will be sad if something happens to you." "Aren't you sad if something happens to me?" Looking at the young girl in front of him, Song Qingshu's lips curled into a playful smile. "Of course I'm sad," Wan Yin Ping hurriedly said. It's just that it's different from Jiejie's kind of sadness." Song Qingshu understood that going too far was as bad as not going far enough. He didn't continue to ask her what was different. Instead, he suddenly changed to another matter. "Then when something happened to brother-in-law in Kaifeng, did our proud little princess cry for brother-in-law in the dead of night?" "Umph, I'm not a weak person like Jiejie. Why would I cry for you?" Wan Yin Ping suddenly widened her eyes and looked Song Qingshu up and down. "Brother-in-law, now that you've come back, I feel that you've changed a lot." "Really, what's changed?" Song Qingshu was secretly shocked, but he didn't panic. This was expected. But Wan Yin Ping wasn't Wan Yin Ge and wasn't familiar with Tang Kuo-bian. She wouldn't be able to see this change. "I don't know, I feel. Wan Yin Ping's face suddenly reddened, and she stuttered. "You think brother-in-law is seducing you?" Song Qingshu completed the sentence that she was ashamed to say. "I'm going to die." Wan Yin Ping's face was burning. How could she stand it? She flicked her wrist and whipped him. As soon as Song Qingshu said those words, he was already prepared. Seeing that she moved her wrist, he rolled lazily and dodged the whip. Seizing the opportunity, he turned over and got on his horse. As he galloped forward, he laughed and said, "Ping, don't forget the purpose of our trip. It's to hunt, not to beat brother-in-law." Watching Song Qingshu's back disappear into the distance, Wan Yin Ping's tensed face finally couldn't take it anymore. She giggled and muttered, "Smelly brother-in-law." Then, with a beautiful flip, she mounted the little red horse and squeezed the horse's belly. Hiya! Following this, the two of them finally began their hunting journey. However, this mountain was not far from Daxing Prefecture, so there weren't many wild animals on the mountain. There weren't any fierce beasts either. The two of them wandered around the forest for half a day and only saw a few sparrows. As Song Qingshu expected, Wan Yin Ping's archery skills were amazing. She was still riding her horse, and when she drew her bow and arrow, the sparrows fell to the ground. Even though he was mentally prepared, Song Qingshu was still stunned by Wan Yin Ping's heroic posture on the horse. Her waist was as soft as a willow branch, and her body leaned back in an exaggerated arc, revealing the perfect curves of her chest. The sound of the bowstring rang out one after another, and the sparrows in the sky also fell to the ground. Wan Yinping put away her bow and arrow and sat up straight on her horse. She turned around to say something, but happened to see Song Qingshu looking at her. She couldn't help but blush. "Brother-in-law, why are you looking at me like that?" Song Qingshu praised her from the bottom of his heart. "I've only just discovered today that the little girl with a runny nose has grown into a beautiful young lady." Hearing his praise, Wan Yinping's heart was both sweet and angry. Who had a runny nose in the past? Song Qingshu laughed, and the two of them played around like this for a while. Suddenly, Wan Yinping asked, "Brother-in-law, why aren't you drawing your bow?" Song Qingshu's smile froze on his face. Even though his martial arts were high now, his riding and archery skills— no, not to mention riding and archery, even if he was standing on flat ground, it would be hard to hit a target. He could only say, "Brother-in-law's condition isn't good today, I won't shoot." "What condition isn't good?" Wan Yinping didn't agree. "Ever since I was young, Pinger has admired brother-in-law's riding and archery skills. When I was young, there was once when I pestered Fu Huang and brother to go hunting on the grasslands. In the end, an evil eagle came down from the sky and grabbed me with its wings. The guards didn't even have time to react. It was brother-in-law who killed the eagle with one arrow and caught me as I fell from the sky. I will never forget the situation at that time. In Ping Er's heart, brother-in-law is the greatest hero in riding and archery. From then on, I worked hard to learn riding and archery. It was for Wan Yinping's face was red, and she suddenly stopped talking. "For what?" Song Qingshu asked curiously. At the same time, he smacked his lips. He hadn't thought that Tang Quobian was such a fierce person in the past. No wonder Wan Yinping always seemed to have a strange feeling for him. So there was this layer of relationship. Nothing. Wan Yinping's expression suddenly dimmed. It was because of brother-in-law's performance that time. Fu Huang was happy and betrothed Jie to you in front of everyone. Song Qingshu sighed inside. It was said that young girls matured early. He hadn't thought that Wan Yinping would already have such thoughts when she was still a young girl. He couldn't bear to see her so lonely, so he smiled and said, "It seems that we really are fated to become a family in the end." "Fate, we are a family," Wan Yinping murmured. She quickly calmed herself down and raised her chin. Her face regained its vigor. "Brother-in-law, it's a pity that the Mongols invaded and we lost the grassland after we lost. We can no longer hunt like before. We can only shoot these little sparrows in the mountains." Wan Yinping threw the sparrow she shot onto the ground with disdain. Clearly, she didn't think of the sparrow as a trophy. "Brother-in-law, can you let Ping see your amazing archery skills again? Ever since that time when we were young, Ping hasn't had the chance to go hunting with brother-in-law." Looking at Wan Yinping's bright smile and her eager expression, Song Qingshu's spirit rose. "Okay." A sly smile appeared in Wan Yinping's eyes. "Brother-in-law, don't lose to Pinger's archery skills. Ping will be disappointed." To this day, her own riding and archery skills had reached the acme of perfection. When she thought back to Tang Quobian's arrow, it might not be as magnificent as she remembered it to be when she was young. However, that arrow had a special meaning that she could never surpass. What a joke! When his brother-in-law ever disappointed Ping Song Qingshu already had an idea. He picked up the bow on the horse, but didn't take out the bow and arrows in the basket. "Ping, have you heard of the story of the birds startled by the twang of a bow?" Birds startled by the twang of a bow. Wan Yinping raised her head to look at the sky. As an archery expert, of course she had heard of this story. However, she only thought of it as a legend. Did brother-in-law want to recreate this miracle? However, it wasn't so coincidental that an injured goose flew by. There were a lot of startled sparrows, but she didn't believe that these sparrows would fall from the sky because of the sound of the bowstring. Song Qingshu said proudly, "Your brother-in-law has already reached the point where he doesn't have arrows. It's just a few sparrows. Why would I need arrows?" "Brother-in-law, aren't you ashamed? You're already so old and you're still boasting." Even though she worshipped brother-in-law, Wan Yinping was still rational. How could there be such a thing as an archery in the world? You don't believe me? Seeing Wan Yinping hurriedly nod her head, Song Qingshu didn't say anything else. He didn't take the bow and arrow, but pulled the bowstring. The sound of the bowstring was heard, and the sparrows in the sky fell to the ground. Song Qingshu turned his head and smiled at her. Do you believe me now? Wan Yinping's beautiful mouth opened so wide that an egg could be stuffed in it. How is this possible? Wan Yinping quickly urged her horse to pick up the sparrows that had fallen. She found that although there weren't any wounds on their bodies, they were dead. She excitedly ran back to Song Qingshu. Brother-in-law, how did you do it? Chapter 761. Song Qing had a mysterious expression and put a finger to his mouth. Exclamation point. Wan Yinping was confused. Brother-in-law, what kind of language are you speaking? Song Qing couldn't help but feel awkward. In his moment of pride, he couldn't help but think of the famous catchphrase from Detective Conan. Of course, he changed it a little. What I mean is, Song Qing purposely paused to keep Wan Yinping in suspense before saying, this is a secret. Wan Yinping was so angry that she almost whipped him again. However, her curiosity got the upper hand. Brother-in-law, she purposely dragged out the last syllable and said coquettishly, tell me. Most of the time, Wan Yinping's side was cold, so when she acted coquettishly like a little girl, even Song Qing couldn't stand it. This is brother-in-law's unique skill. You can't just tell anyone. Actually, the reason behind it was not worth a penny. He could shoot down the sparrow with an empty bow not because he was good at archery, but because he didn't know anything about archery, so he could only use this method. When he heard Wan Yinping talk about Tang Qua's amazing archery skills, he knew that it would be hard to avoid archery, and he couldn't act too clumsily. After all, the girl next to him was a master archer and could see his archery skills with one glance. So he decided to play a big game. Of course, he wasn't going to reach a state where there were no arrows. He just wanted to use this to scare Wan Yinping and attract her attention. Then, he would secretly shoot out sword energy to shoot down the sparrow from the tree. Speaking of which, he was glad that they were in the forest and not on the grasslands. Otherwise, with the height of the eagles on the grasslands, his sword energy wouldn't have been able to shoot so far. Can't you even tell me? I'm not someone else. Wan Yinping continued to shake his arm and begged. This is really my unique skill. Of course, Song Qing could not tell her the truth and could only think of a way to dodge the question. In this lifetime, I will only tell this secret to my wife and then pass it on to my son. At worst, I'll be your wife. Wan Yinping blurted out. The two of them froze at the same time. What did you say? Song Qing's expression was extremely strange. Wan Yinping's face was as red as a tomato. You heard wrong. Finishing, she urged her horse to gallop into the forest with a guilty conscience. Song Qing laughed involuntarily. This time, he didn't have to think of a reason to explain himself. She definitely wouldn't have the face to mention this matter again. He hurriedly shouted, Pinger, wait for me. How could Wan Yinping wait for him now? Hearing his voice, she ran even faster. Luckily, the forest was not good for horses to run at full speed, so Song Qing could barely keep up with her. Brother-in-law, there's a spotted deer here. Wan Yinping, who was in front, gave a cry of surprise. The excitement of finding prey finally washed away the awkwardness in her heart. She hurriedly shot an arrow, but the deer was very alert. When it heard her cry, it moved and just happened to dodge the fatal arrow that came at it. The spotted deer jumped left and right. Using the cover of the forest, it quickly disappeared into the thicket. However, Wan Yinping had been out for a long time, and it wasn't easy for her to encounter such a rare prey. How could she let go? She hurriedly bent down and pressed her body tightly against the horse's back. She dodged the branches that were flying towards her and chased after the spotted deer. Song Qing was dumbfounded. How could he have such good riding skills? In this moment of daze, Wan Yinping's figure had already disappeared. He could only faintly hear sounds coming from the forest in the distance. Right now, Wang Yinping was related to the antidote for saving Song Yuanxiao and the others. Song Qing naturally didn't want anything to happen to her. Of course, after interacting with her for this period of time, he had a very good impression of this pretty girl. From his perspective, he also didn't want anything to happen to her. Song Qing gritted his teeth and abandoned the horse he was riding. With a light tap of his feet, he shot into the forest like an arrow. Finally, without the restraint of the horse, Song Qing was like a bird in the forest or a fish in the ocean. If someone was watching from the side, they would only be able to see a black shadow jumping from tree to tree. His speed was even faster than the horse running at full speed. After chasing like this for a while, Song Qing finally caught up to Wang Yinping. However, he didn't dare get close to her, so he slowed down and followed her from a distance to secretly protect her. Yu, the spotted deer had already run into a dead end. There was no path in front of it, there were pursuers behind it, and there was a steep mountain stream next to it. It couldn't help but whimper. Wang Yinping couldn't help but give a proud smile. Let's see where you can run now. She knocked her bow and was about to shoot when the spotted deer seemed to have a mind of its own. It shrunk back a bit, and Wang Yinping didn't have an angle to shoot. "Humph, do you think this princess can't do anything to you?" Wang Yinping put down her bow and pulled out the knife on her waist as she jumped off the horse. The path was too steep, and the size of a horse couldn't go up. Luckily, the spotted deer had nowhere else to go, and she alone was enough to deal with it. As Wang Yinping got closer, the spotted deer became visibly anxious. It would occasionally look at the mountain stream next to them. Seeing this, Wang Yinping was secretly scared. She was afraid that it would see that there was no hope of survival and jump into the mountain stream. Then all her efforts would be in vain. Wang Yinping held the knife in her left hand and placed her right hand on the whip at her waist. Her attention was completely focused on the spotted deer not far away. Once it decided to jump into the mountain stream, her whip would immediately wrap around its body. The deer wasn't very big, so Wang Yinping was confident that she could catch it. Song Qing's brows slightly furrowed, and he quickly got closer. He didn't approve of her taking such a dangerous action for the sake of hunting. Seeing that she was getting closer and closer to the deer, an excited smile gradually floated onto Wang Yinping's face. Suddenly, she felt a numbness on her calf. She looked down and saw a small snake with gray and white patterns baring its teeth and spitting out its temper. "Oh no!" Wang Yinping exclaimed. Just as she was about to go back, she felt a numb feeling come from her leg. She lost her balance, and her entire body fell into the mountain stream. The snake was too small, and Song Qing didn't notice it at first. It wasn't until Wang Yinping suddenly stopped that he realized something was wrong. When he looked closely and saw the small snake, Wang Yinping had already fallen into the mountain stream. In a split second, Song Qing didn't think too much and his body rushed out. Unfortunately, he was a step too late and only managed to grab Wang Yinping's sleeve. Unfortunately, the sleeve was instantly torn. Song Qing cursed under his breath and threw away the sleeve. His entire body jumped up and caught Wang Yinping. It was a pity that the two of them were falling too fast, and he couldn't use his qigong. He could only tightly protect Wang Yinping in his arms and circulate his qi to protect himself as they rolled down. Chapter 762. Although the mountain stream was steep, it wasn't a straight cliff. Therefore, the two of them rolled down and didn't fall vertically. Song Qing pressed Wang Yinping's head against his chest, and at the same time, he protected her with his hands and feet. He secretly cursed in his heart. Those plots on TV are all lies. What falling off a cliff and not dying, rolling down a slope without any injuries. Along the way, he didn't know how many sharp rocks and branches they had hit. With the speed at which the two of them rolled down, if he didn't have Jinshi protecting his body, all the bones in his body would have been broken. If his luck wasn't good, he would have been cut open by those protruding rocks. Even though Song Qing had Jinshi protecting his body, he was still in a difficult situation. Not only were his clothes in tatters, but he had also hit countless things along the way. It was as if he had been hit by several top martial artists. Right now, he had suffered serious internal injuries. Fine, now I don't have to use my internal energy to pretend that my face is pale. Song Qing smiled bitterly and looked down at Wan Yinping in his arms, who knew that when he met her big eyes, Song Qing happily said, "I was afraid that you would faint." "Brother-in-law, thank you." Wan Yinping's voice was very gentle. She looked at Song Qing's wretched state and compared it to her own. Other than a few scratches, her clothes were almost undamaged. She knew that it was because he was holding her tightly in his arms and using his body to protect her. Don't take such risks in the future. It's just hunting. If you fall off a cliff again, brother-in-law won't be able to save you every time. Even though he wasn't her real brother-in-law, Song Qing unknowingly took the role and couldn't help but lecture her. I'll stay by brother-in-law's side for the rest of my life. That way, even if something happens to me, brother-in-law can save me. Wan Yinping raised her head, and her eyes seemed to shine like stars. Song Qing couldn't help but reach out and scratch her nose. What does a child know about a lifetime? You'll have to marry in the future. How can you stay by brother-in-law's side for the rest of your life? I'm not a child for a long time. Wan Yinping snorted in dissatisfaction. I'm not going to marry. I want to stay with sister. Brother-in-law for the rest of my life. Song Qing's heart moved. He was about to strike while the iron was hot, but he suddenly saw a trace of black air floating between her eyebrows. Only then did he remember that she had been bitten by a small snake before. How could he still have the mood to flirt with her? He hurriedly asked, "Ping'er, were you bitten by a snake just now? How do you feel now?" With his reminder, Wan Yinping finally remembered and couldn't help but exclaim, My entire body is numb. Brother-in-law, am I going to die?" Towards the end, her voice already had a sobbing tone. "Nonsense. With brother-in-law here, I won't let you die." Song Qing stretched out his hand to take her pulse. Feeling that her vitality was gradually fading, he couldn't help but be shocked. "Brother-in-law, I don't want to die with regrets. There are some words that I must tell you." Wan Yinping's voice gradually became weaker. She felt her eyelids become heavier. If it wasn't for the fact that she had an unfinished wish, she might have closed her eyes and fallen asleep. "Save it for later," Song Qing asked in a deep voice. "Where were you bitten just now?" "Leg. I think it's my calf there," Wan Yinping answered subconsciously. Rip. Song Qing tore open the pants on her calf. On her white and slender calf, there was a bite mark of a poisonous snake. The blood around the wound was dark black, and it was frightening to look at. "Brother-in-law, what are you doing?" Feeling that her calf was exposed to the air, the natural restraint of a woman made her panic. She unconsciously wanted to pull her leg back, but her entire body was numb and her legs wouldn't listen to her. "Don't move. You've been poisoned and there's no other way. Brother-in-law will suck it out for you." Song Qing didn't care about exposing his martial arts at this time and quickly sealed a few of the major acupuncture points on her body to stop the snake poison from entering her heart. "No, brother-in-law, you'll die too." Luckily, Wan Yinping's mind was a bit muddled and her attention had been diverted, so she didn't see what he was doing. "Brother-in-law is blessed. You won't die so easily." Song Qing smiled at her. "If you really die, at worst, we'll be mandarin ducks that share the same fate. The road to the Yellow Springs won't be lonely." Smelly brother-in-law, who wants to share the same fate as you. Wan Yinping's tears turned to laughter. Her heart was beating rapidly, and some light returned to her eyes. When Song Qing's lips touched the wound on her leg, Wan Yinping's heart beat even faster. Speaking of which, it was strange. Her entire body was clearly numb, but she seemed to be able to feel that strange touch. Looking at him sucking on it, Wan Yinping couldn't help but fall into a daze. The sky gradually darkened. Song Qing saw that the blood flowing out of the wound on her leg had turned bright red again and couldn't help but let out a long sigh. She was actually deeply poisoned. If it wasn't for his deep cultivation and long breathing, he wouldn't have been able to maintain such a high intensity of sucking, and the poisonous blood in her body wouldn't have been completely expelled. Even if she had a naturally large lung capacity, she would have been poisoned to death after sucking so much poisonous blood for so long. Song-Ching looked around and found a strange type of grass. He chewed the leaves and put it on Wan Yinping's wound. He had interacted with many poison masters over the years and had learned a few things from them. Ping, do you have a clean handkerchief on you? I want to help you bandage your wound. Song-Ching raised his head and found Wan Yinping looking at him with a red face. He couldn't help but pause. After being discovered, Wan Yinping's eyes were slightly evasive. She quickly said, I'm not as delicate as those Han girls. Why would I carry a handkerchief on me? Wan Yinping hesitated. Brother-in-law, turn around for a second. Although Song-Ching was puzzled, he just thought that the little girl had some inconvenience. So he turned around. Done. Very quickly, Wan Yinping's voice came. Song-Ching turned his head and a soft silk-like material was shoved into his hand. Didn't you say you didn't have a handkerchief? Why does it seem to have warmth on it? Song-Ching reflexively raised it to sniff, and a faint fragrance came to his nose. Brother-in-law, Wan Yinping bit her lips, and her face was so red that water was about to drip out. Seeing her slightly messy clothes, Song-Ching finally understood what this silk handkerchief was. He couldn't help but smile awkwardly. He pretended that the higher-ups didn't know and knelt down to help her bandage her wound. Pinger, can you still walk? Song-Ching looked around. Right now, they were at the bottom of a mountain stream. It was pitch black in the distance, and they couldn't see any way out. In reality, the best choice was to go back the way they came. Even though the mountain stream was high, with Song-Ching's Qigong, it wasn't hard to climb up. However, this would make Wan Yinping suspicious. Chapter 763. Wan Yinping stood up and tried to take a step, but a wave of dizziness came over her, causing her to fall to the side. Song-Ching reacted quickly and caught her waist. What's wrong? I don't know, I feel weak all over, and my head feels dizzy. Wan Yinping touched her forehead and said weakly, maybe the remaining snake venom in my body is still working. I'll be fine after a while. It's dark now. I'll carry you around to see if there's a place we can rest. Song-Ching replied. Okay, Wan Yinping's voice was very, very soft. Song-Ching held her in his arms and began to search the valley. Throughout the entire process, Wan Yinping did not say a word. She only pressed her face against his chest, and no one knew what she was thinking. Finally, Song-Ching found a small cave. He found some dry grass and laid it on the ground. Song-Ching gently put Wan Yinping on top of it. Pinger, it's dark outside and we don't know where to go. Plus, you're injured, so I'm afraid we'll have to spend the night here. Okay, Wan Yinping hugged her knees and sat on the pile of dried grass, looking at him quietly. Song-Ching couldn't help but tease. Where did the lively princess go? Can't you say anything other than okay? Stinky brother-in-law, you're teasing me again. Wan Yinping finally laughed and couldn't help but grab a handful of dry grass and throw it at him. After the two of them played around for a while, Song-Ching took out a handful of rations and handed it over. He said awkwardly, this rations is a bit broken. Pinger, you have to make do with it. Looking at the broken rations, Wan Yinping's eyes immediately turned red. Brother-in-law, the rations are broken like this. In order to protect me, you must have suffered a lot of injuries. Song-Ching smiled nonchalantly. Didn't I tell you before? Brother-in-law's skin is rough and thick. It won't get in the way. You're still saying you're fine? Look at how your clothes are torn. Wan Yinping moved over and looked at him with a distressed expression. He looks miserable, but he's not really injured, Song-Ching said with a smile. I don't believe you. Take off your clothes and let me see. Wan Yinping pouted and said, Take off my clothes? Song-Ching expression turned strange. Smelly brother-in-law, what kind of nonsense are you thinking in your head? Wan Yinping pinched him with a red face. I wanted to check where you were injured. I have some medicine on me. Song-Ching heart moved. The antidote to Rouge Drunk was so important that she couldn't have left it casually. It was very likely that she carried it with her. It was a good opportunity to inquire about it. Okay, don't pinch me. I'll take it off, okay? Song-Ching made a helpless expression and slowly took off his clothes. Even though he had Jinshi protecting his body, it could only prevent internal injuries, such as bone fractures. There were still many scratches on the surface of his skin from the broken rocks and branches along the way. Wang Yinping's tears instantly flowed down. She choked and called out, "Brother-in-law, okay, it just looks scary, it's not a big deal." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. "Don't move, I'll help you apply the medicine." Wang Yinping bit her lip and rolled her eyes at him. She then took out a small bag wrapped in brown paper and placed it on the ground. Song Qingshu's heart moved. He pointed at the small bags and smiled. "Ping Er, why do you carry so much medicine with you?" Wang Yinping wrinkled her nose. There's a lot of poison here. If you dare to bully me, sister, I'll poison you to death." "Really?" Song Qingshu casually grabbed a bag of medicine and opened it to smell it. "What poison is this?" "Don't." Wang Yinping was shocked and quickly reached out to grab the bag of medicine. "This is drunken rouge." Song Qingshu had actually seen the small words written on the bag a long time ago, so he picked it out from the many bags of medicine. Just by smelling it, he felt dizzy and weak. He couldn't help but be shocked. This drunken rouge is really targeted at martial arts masters. With my current level of cultivation, just smelling it causes such a big reaction. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to faint," Song Qingshu yelled with an exaggerated expression. His entire body fell backwards. In reality, it wasn't as serious as it seemed. He had already forced the poison out of his body. "I told you not to take anything." Wang Yinping was angry and anxious. She quickly took out another bag of medicine and used her finger to scoop up a fingernail-sized amount of powder. She brought it to Song Qingshu's mouth. "Eat it, this is the antidote." No wonder I didn't see it in the pile of medicine. It was on her all along. Song Qingshu secretly looked at the antidote carefully, thinking that he would find a chance to steal it later. "Stinky brother-in-law, you scared me to death." Seeing him eat the antidote, Wang Yinping patted her chest and finally let out a sigh of relief. "In any case, brother-in-law knows that Ping Er will save me." Song Qingshu laughed as he replied, but his heart was very depressed because she had stuffed the antidote bag back into her pocket. Don't move. Just lie down like this. I'll help you apply the medicine." Wang Yinping rolled her eyes at him. She took out the golden medicine bag and carefully applied the powder to the messy wounds on his body. Because Song Qingshu was lying down, Wang Yinping had to kneel on the ground as she applied the medicine. She bent down and carefully wiped the wounds for him. Song Qingshu raised his hand many times to steal the antidote from her pocket. However, even though his martial arts are high, he wasn't good at stealing things. He wasn't confident that he wouldn't disturb Wang Yinping, so he could only give up on this tempting idea. Wang Yinping's fingers brushed past the messy wounds on Song Qingshu's body. In her mind, the image of him hugging her tightly and using his body to protect her appeared. Her eyes became misty. "Brother-in-law, you saved me again." "Silly girl, if brother-in-law doesn't save you, who would I save?" Song Qingshu said with a smile. "If Jiejia and I fell off the cliff at the same time, who would you save first?" Wang Yinping suddenly looked at him with anticipation. Song Qingshu was speechless. Did women like to ask these kind of questions? Of course I would save them together. The situation was urgent. You could only save one person. Wang Yinping was very dissatisfied with his perfunctory attitude. Song Qingshu was even more depressed. However, he knew that if he didn't answer this question well, it would destroy the good impression he had built up with so much difficulty. "I wouldn't save anyone." "Why?" Wang Yinping didn't expect this answer and couldn't help but be stunned. Song Qingshu said with a serious expression, "Because no matter who you save, the two people who survive will live in guilt and self-blame for the rest of their lives. It's better not to save anyone and the three of us die together. Even if we go to the underworld, we can still be a happy family." Song Qingshu originally thought that Wang Yinping would be moved to tears. Who knew that she would respond by biting his shoulder? Song Qingshu couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. "Why did you bite me?" Chapter 764. "Nothing, I'm happy to." Wang Yinping wrinkled her nose proudly. but when she saw the deep bite mark, she couldn't help but stick out her tongue. She gently rubbed the wound. "Brother-in-law, does it hurt a lot?" "Of course. Why don't you let me bite you?" Song Qing-shu rolled his eyes at her. "Okay, bite me." Who knew that Wan Yinping would roll up her sleeves and extend her white arm in front of him? Forget it," Song Qing-shu said, depressed. Hee, brother-in-law cares for me." Wan Yinping wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her head on his chest. "Brother-in-law? Does it really hurt?" "Yes. Let me help you blow." Wan Yinping got up after speaking. She puffed up her little mouth and lightly blew around the bite mark. The young girl's breath smelled like orchids. Without realizing it, Song Qing-shu's heart started to beat faster. Wan Yinping clearly felt it at such a close distance. A blush slowly spread across her face. However, she didn't show any signs of retreating. Instead, she buried her head even lower, her lips faintly brushing against his skin. Song Qing-shu's throat was a bit dry. He said unconsciously, Okay, it doesn't hurt anymore. Get up, it's improper." "I'm not afraid." "What are you afraid of?" Wan Yinping's body slid, and she moved her head in front of Song Qing-shu. She pursed her lips and looked at him at such a close distance. Her eyes became misty. "Brother-in-law, you don't have to pretend. I know that you have been intentionally or unintentionally seducing me." "Really, you're thinking too much." Song Qing-shu was embarrassed. It looked like his flirting skills were in the negatives. He couldn't even fool a little girl. "Why are you panicking? I don't mind." Wan Yinping's face became redder. "On the contrary, I'm very happy. You saved me when I was young. At that time, I secretly made up my mind that I would marry you when I grew up. Who knew that my father would betroth my sister to you? If it was anyone else, I would definitely object on the spot, but my sister doted on me since I was young. I couldn't compete with her. Moreover, I could see that she liked you very much." Thoughts buried in the bottom of my heart. Staying by my sister's side all these years and watching the two of you live a happy life is enough for me. Originally, my heart was as calm as still water, but not long ago, I sensed that you seemed to have feelings for me. My heart was filled with joy and fear. Song Qing-shu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In order to pick up a girl, he jumped off a cliff and drank blood, almost losing his life. In the end, the only one who affected her was his brother-in-law. Until today, when I saw how you risked your life for me, I finally thought it through. There's no need to hide my feelings for you anymore." Wan Yinping's eyes were watery. She slowly lowered her head and kissed him with her red lips. Song Qing-shu had never claimed to be a gentleman. The reason he had distanced himself from Wan Yin-go-bai before was because he was worried that she would notice something and expose his identity. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to save Song Yuanxiao and the others. But with Wan Yinping, there was no such problem. Although she was very familiar with Tang Quobian, she wasn't as familiar with Tang Quobian's body as her sister was. Therefore, Song Qing-shu wasn't afraid that she would notice anything. Also, he had been worrying about how to get the antidote for rouge drunk from her. Now that she had thrown herself into his arms, how could he let go of such a great opportunity? As for Wan Yinping thinking that he was her brother-in-law, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel a trace of guilt every time he thought about it. But now that he thought about it, he felt a different kind of excitement. Anyway, from a legal point of view, before Tang Quobian died, he gave me the ownership of his woman and inheritance. In a sense, this Wan Yinping is also his woman. Song Qing-shu's self-comforting thoughts flashed through his mind. He was immersed in the girl's sweet kiss. The girl's kiss was very jerky, but it was this jerkiness that could easily arouse a man. Song Qing-shu tasted the girl's sweet and fragrant lips. He felt his body heat up more and more. He wanted to crush the girl in his arms and shove her into his arms. Sensing that Song Qing-shu's hand had reached into her clothes, Wan Yinping was shy and eager. She didn't notice that he had taken the opportunity to take away the antidote for rouge drunk. After getting the antidote, it wasn't that Song Qing-shu didn't want to stop, but the girl's fragrant breath and Wan Yinping's unreserved expression made him completely lost. At this time, Wan Yinping was also very aroused. The feelings she had suppressed for so many years were released. She became a bit reckless. At this time, she didn't want to think about the consequences of doing this. She didn't want to think about how she would face her sister afterwards. There was only one voice in her mind. I want to give my body to brother-in-law. After taking off Wan Yinping's clothes, what appeared in front of him was a fresh and energetic body. It was different from a married woman's plump and soft body. The girl's body was more firm and flexible. Song Qingshu couldn't help but stare in a daze. Brother-in-law, it seemed to come out of her throat in a coquettish voice. Wan Yinping's call of brother-in-law was sweet and greasy. Song Qingshu couldn't resist and pressed his body heavily on top of her. Even though she was a bit shy, Wan Yinping cooperated and spread her legs. She offered her precious body that she had preserved for over 10 years to the man on top of her. When Song Qingshu completely entered her body tightened. Her arms hugged him tightly, and she emotionally called out, "Brother-in-law, brother-in-law." Song Qingshu kissed her slightly furrowed brows. Seeing the tears at the corner of her eyes, he couldn't help but feel pity. "Pinger, does it hurt?" Wan Yinping smiled bashfully. "Smelly brother-in-law, I just bit you. I didn't think that you would take revenge so quickly." Haha. Her words made Song Qingshu's body swell up even more. He looked down at her condescendingly. "Don't you like it?" Wan Yinping gave a low cry and bravely responded to his gaze. I like it when brother-in-law bullies me like this. In the future, brother-in-law can bully me like this at any time." The grassland women were not as shy as the Han women. Her confession was extremely passionate. Song Qingshu had originally thought that her body would have recovered by now. When he heard the girl's passionate murmurs, it was like lightning had ignited the fire. He lowered his waist and began to savor the tender and juicy body under him. In the cave, the man's low growls mixed with the woman's sobbing moans, creating a perfect chord. After an unknown amount of time, even the bravest girl couldn't win against the battle-hardened old hooligan. Wan Yinping went from actively fighting at the beginning to throwing away her armor and throwing away her armor. In the end, she was utterly defeated and could only beg for mercy. Only then did the two of them end this fierce battle. End of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.